Hello everyone. Welcome to the most interesting talk I'm ever going to do. I'm Sky, for those of you who haven't met me. I run talks here every Tuesday night. They're on different topics. Next week is financial abundance with spiritual principles. So you guys are welcome to join for that. It's a pleasure to see so many new faces and so many people I already love in the audience. You guys really make my life a lot better by being in it. The last 3 or 4 months, I've been doing 3 or 4 courses on masculinity, on understanding men. Obviously, tonight is a very shortened account of the best of what I've managed to learn in that time. Okay, this whole journey for me started when I really met my soulmate, which is Todd, he's my husband in the other room. And until then, I'd kind of lived in denial. I really thought I understood men and men did not understand me. Okay? And the only thing, I say this all the time here, but the only thing worse than not being able to manifest your soulmate is being with your soulmate and screwing it up because you don't know what you're doing. And I'm by no means an unevolved woman. I'd read many books on relationships. The problem is most of those books are written from the perspective of women. Okay, they're not written from the perspective of men. And male psychology is, it's something that you actually have to go and look for. You have to actually go and to see from their perspective. So I'll take you into this bit by bit. Because this is a bigger talk, as in slide-wise than the other nights, I'll leave the questions until the end. I'm going to try and get through all the talk bit in an hour and a half, and then you guys can ask me as many questions as you like, okay? I've asked some of the boys to come in to verify some of what I'm saying, because obviously I'm not a boy. Okay? So I've got Lance back there coming to speak to you for a little bit, and I've got Todd coming in to speak to you a little bit as well, because I think in me committing to understanding them deeper, it created an opportunity for them to understand themselves deeper. Because obviously I wanted to ask them, I'd go up and say, is that really what it's about? And it's sad that most men have never been given the opportunity to explore their manhood. And this is what you're going to face in your intimate relationships, is that you're going to ask men questions that they don't know the answers to. Okay? And that was one of the hardest things for me, and what made me make the commitment to actually go and learn it myself, was that men get more of an emotional bashing than women ever will from childhood, because it's just that, keep your feelings down, keep your feelings hidden, don't show any weakness, be really tough from when they're very, very young in a lot of situations. So they're not allowed to explore their emotions or explore their feelings. This is not all men, it's about 80% of men. There are about 25% of men who are feminine in nature, but tonight we're going to focus predominantly on masculine men. I will do a more advanced course on this, like 2 days in the summer, and then we'll go into depth on the 3 different stages of masculinity and development, but tonight we'll keep it simple. Okay? Okay, so this is me. I'm Sky. I'm a director here at the spa. I help my husband with Pandora Star Company. We sell light machines. So I'm a director of a company, so I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an author. I wrote a book about soulmates called Soulmate Shadow Work. You can get it on Amazon, which goes into depth on the shadow stuff that comes up between soulmates, twin flames, relationships. It doesn't pull any punches. So if you're dealing with difficult things, no matter how difficult it gets, arguments, violence, emotional stuff, I didn't I didn't go for the rainbows and the unicorns without bringing what was actually going on. Some of the hardest things we experience, the deepest betrayals we experience, are in intimate relationships, whether it's cheating, whether it's financial abuse, whether it's emotional abuse, whether it's physical violence. So I figured, we deserved help with whatever comes up in that arena. Tonight we're going to be dealing with the principles of A Course in Miracles and Theta healing, because I work with both. Every day I get up in the morning and I do my Course in Miracles exercise, and every day straight after I do my Theta healing meditation, and the two together have saved my life. I've been doing Course in Miracles for 10 years. I've been doing Theta for 2. And I have a clinic on Mondays and Thursdays, so I see clients for private one-to-one sessions on Mondays and Thursdays. You're of course welcome to drop in for those. Okay, so put up your hand if you don't know what Theta healing is. Just one person. Okay, so Theta healing is a technique created by Vianis de Boll. It basically uses the Theta brainwave state to access the subconscious mind and the spiritual planes of existence, to access powerful instant healings, knowledge, and guidance. Theta healing includes belief work, feeling work, body scanning, readings, past life healings, ancestral healings. And we do it through accessing the 7th plane and then using that level of vibration to change beliefs, emotions, energies that are held inside the different bodies. We're going to be doing downloads tonight. That's one of the main tools of Theta. So in Theta, we believe that there are 4 levels of belief. And in those levels of belief, we hold sometimes conflicting beliefs and sometimes the same beliefs on more than one level. This is why sometimes when you start doing an affirmation, you clear it from your childhood, but you don't clear it from your ancestral level. You don't clear it from your past lives, or you don't clear it from your from the collective or social consciousness. So then it's still hanging around. You're like, I thought I cleared this. I'm not sure where it's gone. Yeah. So with Theta, when we do the downloads, we're removing beliefs from all 4 levels and putting beliefs in at all 4 levels. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. Normally I have a lot more downloads than I have tonight. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop and do downloads pretty much straight from Creator as we go along, okay? Because otherwise it would just be too big to cover in one night. A Course in Miracles is a complete self-study spiritual thought system. It's a 3-volume curriculum consisting of a workbook for students, a manual for teachers, and it teaches the way to universal love and peace, or remembering Creator, by undoing guilt through forgiving others. It's very, very deep. When you're doing the course, if you haven't thrown it against the wall at least once, you're not doing it properly. It really lets you see where it is that you're blocking love. It's a very, 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 very powerful book. It was first published in 1975 by Dr. Schumann. And she created the course to the Foundation of Inner Peace. So you can go online and you can literally type in Foundation of Inner Peace and you can access the whole course for free. All the lessons, everything that you need from there to start working through it. So tonight you'll see me talking about A Course in Miracles. You'll see me talking about Theta. Pretty much all the healing techniques I use are either from angel healing or angel therapy or Theta together, because I was an angel healer for 10 years before I got into Theta. So I've been doing spiritual work for a long time. Okay, so this is the bit I'm going to use Lancy for in a second. But the first thing that I want to talk about tonight is a man's intentions. Okay, because it's one of the first things that comes up when we think about men. It's one of the first things that comes up when we think about dating. And the messages that we receive from culture, from media, from our parents, from our friends about a man's intentions are not positive. Okay? On a personal level, most of us are told that men only want sex. Stick up your hand if you've heard that one. He just wants to get into your knickers. Yeah? So the first thing I really want to clarify tonight is that whenever we do anything, everybody is trying to get to a feeling. Okay? Either a feeling of being loved, a feeling of being enough, a feeling of being worthy, a feeling of oneness, of connection. We're always trying to get to a feeling. So when a man does anything, regardless of how stupid it is, he's trying to get to a feeling. Does that make sense? Yes. Yeah? His intention is not to get sex. His intention is to get to the feeling he gets when he has sex. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. If he feels good and like a man when he has sex, and that's the only time culturally he's allowed to feel good, he's going to want sex. Does that make sense? Yeah? So it's never that superficial. Men are not that superficial. They've just been so emotionally cramped down that a lot of them, many nowadays do, but many, I'd say about 80% of the male population don't have an emotional education. There's a good 25% that are getting incredibly emotionally advanced. And there are very strong male movements happening in London and around the world through Anthony Robbins, through the conscious male community, through many men's groups, through psychotherapy. But literally, every man wants the same thing we want, in the sense that they want to feel good, loved, taken care of, respected. Okay? Most important thing you're going to learn tonight, men are not women. Okay? They don't get to feelings the same way that we do, because they're not raised the same way that we do. There's an amazing author and speaker called Brené Brown. She teaches about vulnerability and shame. And she does this amazing a talk on Audible, and on her website you can buy it, and it's called Men, Women and Worthiness. And she explains why gender is so important, because fear, how we get these feelings, is organized around gender. Okay? When you really understand gender, you understand why someone's organized their walls in a particular way. Does that make sense? Yeah? Now, we as women assume that men are just hairless women. Men assume that women are just hairless men, but we assume men are just hairless women. It's the biggest mistake as an assumption we'll ever make. Okay? We are equal, but we are different. Right? And it's in honoring those differences that we begin to build real trust. Right? Because nobody wants to be loved. Come on, I think every girl in this room knows what it's like at some point in life to have someone think that they should be more like a man. Right? Either to be less emotional, or to not be so, what is it that a lot of people call women's inspiration by beauty, vain? Why do you care so much about what you're wearing? It's shallow, it's superficial. There's lots of things that men and people mistake genuine femininity for being shallow and superficial, and we hate that, right? Because it's not true. It's not our truth. It's not really where we're coming from, and it's the same thing about men. Okay, so that's the first thing I want you to think about, is where your beliefs about men have come from. So media-wise, you can't watch a movie without seeing men be violent, without seeing men only want sex, and without seeing men dominate women. Okay? I know we want to believe this doesn't affect us. It does. The mind cannot tell the difference between an image and the truth. We know that. The subconscious mind definitely can't. Does that make sense? Yeah? And there's a reason you're constantly being shown images that desensitize you to the true kindness and love of men. Just think for a minute, right, of firefighters. Guess what? I've got the image of fire, this guy is not motivated by sex. Okay? Think about firefighters, think about coaches, think about animal rescuers, think about fathers, think about policemen, think about healers. The list goes on. Most of the men on this planet are good men. Does that make sense? Yeah? We are spiritual women. We're advanced souls. We know we manifest what we focus on. Do you honestly think we can focus on men being aggressive, idiots, animalistic, who only care about sex, and not manifest this? Okay, so these are serious belief systems that we're being bombarded with every day. Does that make sense? Yeah? So tonight we're really going to explore what men really feel and what men really need, but also their feelings behind the way that they feel when we make those assumptions. So do you want to come up here for a second for me? So this is Lance. He does all our programming here for Pandora Star, and he's also an NLP master and hypnotist, and a gardener, and one of our best friends. So I wanted Lance to talk to you about how hurtful it is when women think that men just want sex for a few minutes.
Yeah, so my experience, and this relationship has since ended primarily because of this, in fact, was that I was accused of only wanting sex because I have a high sex drive, most men do. And the first effect for me with that is I started feeling guilty around the area of sex and around desiring this woman, which is completely wrong. So I started feeling like I couldn't instigate anything, I couldn't be affectionate, and it completely took the wind out of my sails. And what was worse than that is that when it came up repeatedly, and it came up 3 or 4 times, is that not only was she questioning my intention, but she was questioning my integrity. Well, that's what it felt like anyway, and a man without integrity is nothing. I mean, a man will kill someone to protect his integrity. It's not the right integrity, but he'll do that. So for me, it was a huge blow, and she couldn't handle the fact that I was upset by that. She couldn't handle my vulnerability. It was like, put your armour back on and get the fuck back up on the horse. You're not allowed to show emotions in this culture with most women. So so that was my experience. It was devastating, and it ultimately was one of the things that led to the end of the relationship.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Can we have a round of applause for Lance? That was really brilliant. Yeah, so I live with Lance, Ladrin, and Todd, so I live with 3 men. Clearly, when I asked to understand men, the universe answered. I got quite an education. So that's one of the most important things I want you to understand tonight, because when we're thinking about our fears towards men, we think about how we feel, how we would feel if a man just wants sex, which is used, right? Taken advantage of, betrayed. Okay, and I know as a woman, as a good-looking woman, that there are men out there who do just want sex. Okay, but for the first time in great depth, I got to see how harmful it is to paint everybody with the same brush, and also how much it hurts them to be denied the opportunity to make amends or to explain themselves because they've already made a judgment or an assumption on their behalf. Does that resonate? Yeah. So in A Course in Miracles, what it says is that we're always focused on how lonely it is behind the walls we've created, how painful it is to be alone and misunderstood. We don't think about what it is like for the poor bugger trying to run over the different lines of, the different walls and the different barbed wire we've put up to stop people getting to us, right? So it's really about that deep level of compassion where you're able to not, because this is the thing, even when we try and see from a man's perspective, we're still in a woman's body with a woman's point of view. Does that make sense? Yeah? So it's really useful to be able to see it firsthand, what's going on behind the scenes, why it's going on, where it's coming from. Men's intentions are not ever just to have sex. Men's intentions are to have their needs met. Okay? That's the first thing to understand. The next thing to understand, as Lance was saying, through Brené Brown's work, is that men, as a social group, women have these cultural norms through the media, through their parents, through just watching, which is do everything now, do it perfectly. Don't let anybody see how much you're struggling. Be thin, be quiet. Okay, these are very strong cultural messages that come to women all the time. For men, there's a huge one, and it's just one, and it's do not be perceived as weak. Okay? Do not be perceived as weak translates directly through the study of our culture as show dominance and control over women, be emotionally stoic, show contempt towards homosexuals, that one still makes me sick inside, and basically don't let anybody see your weaknesses or flaws, which is what leads to gaslighting. It's what leads to people denying, because women are very intuitive, right? Whether a man wants us to see or not, in 2 seconds flat, we know when he's afraid, right? We know when something's gone wrong. But if the cultural message that he's grown up with as a little boy is do not let anybody see that, because if you do, you're not a man, the more you prod, the more scared he's going to get. Does that make sense? For a woman, if a woman is upset and I say to her, and I don't say to her, what's upsetting you, I'm not a good friend, right? So it's a different world. You get different responses based on the different fear anchors, okay? So that's the first thing, is to recognize so just start thinking about this. What are the messages that you picked up? So can we just do a quick clearing on all the engrams that you've picked up from movies, from the radio, from books, from just the cultural and the historic level of engrams about men that aren't for your highest good? Yeah? So creator of all it is, it's commanded an instant clearing on our historic levels, on our auric field, on our mind of all engrams now about men and masculinity that aren't for our highest and best. Thank you, it's done, show me. Deep breath in. And one more time, in. In. Okay. Looking a bit better already. Okay, so inside a man's mind. Okay? So this is where it looks like from our side. So have you ever heard a man tell you something or do something to you and you literally have no idea what they want in that situation? Okay? You're so lost as to what the hell they want. You ask them what they want, they kind of shrug at you, look confused, or just say, I just want to be left alone. Yeah? The truth is our behaviors, feelings and emotions are much more hardwired than you could possibly imagine. So most of you in this room have done Theta, and if you think that on our genetic level, our DNA level, we're holding 700 years worth of beliefs and programming, okay? Particularly about gender and about what it means. So men are holding that on their genetic level, okay? And all men have had the experience biologically of being a woman. In the womb, we all start out as women, okay? About 8 weeks in, we get the men, when they've got the Y chromosome, they become men. They get a flood of testosterone that women never get, okay? But we all start out in the womb as women, okay? My point is that most of our behavior and feelings come from our hardwiring. If you don't believe me, try and fast for a couple of days. All your beliefs about needing to eat, needing to drink, starvation, what's normal, what's not normal, even if you just try giving up sugar, are going to come up, okay? Your behaviors, your practice, your conditioning is way more powerful than you think, okay? So tonight we're going to be looking at that. The good thing is about Theta is that you can change this. Okay, even to start understanding the differences between male DNA, female DNA, the difference between male responses and female responses without being freaked out, right? Because it's a genetic response as well as an ancestral and a childhood response, okay? So men will always act and behave in alignment with their hardwiring and then try to justify their actions. So most of us think that we think and then we act. The truth is we normally act and then we think. They've got experiments that show that we make decisions almost half an hour, sometimes months before we actually make the move, okay? So normally when this is happening, you'll hear sentences like, I just don't feel like talking right now. This just doesn't feel right. Or maybe they don't say anything and they just leave or lock themselves in a room or sulk, yeah, or they get angry. Okay. This is what we were talking about. So a man's hardwiring goes all the way back hundreds of thousands of years ago, when we as humans lived in small tribes of hunters and gatherers. Every individual holds 700 years worth of ancestral programming in their DNA. What do you think the chances are that the men you've been dating still have a program that their main purpose is to be a hunter? Yeah? So this is for the Theta healers in the room, be aware of that when you're working with men. Do you think that's Creator's truth about men, that their purpose is to be a hunter? No, it's not. But it served the species. It served the survival of the species. Okay? This is why men will throw themselves off buildings when they lose their job. Because in this modern culture, their job is the equivalent to hunting. And if they can't hunt in a tribal scenario, they may as well be dead. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So this is the other thing that women struggle with, is we struggle to take men's perspective seriously. And just right now, as I'm sitting with you guys, I can already feel the irritation in the room. It's like, why do they see things that way? Why? It's not that, they're not hunters anymore. And this is, in our hearts, this is the biggest issue, is that 80% of communication is nonverbal. We might think that they don't know what we're thinking and feeling, and that if we just keep our mouth shut, they won't notice. They notice. Okay? They notice that contempt. They notice that disrespect, and physiologically they can smell it. The pheromones you produce are different. The hormones you produce are different. You produce adrenaline, you produce cortisol. You produce different smells when you're in a state of irritation and contempt. Does that make sense? Right? And women are very good at being passive aggressive. So when a guy goes, what's going on? Are you upset with me? No, I'm fine. Right? And they know, just like we know, that something isn't right. Okay? They know they've lost our respect. They know that we're thinking they're being idiotical for having their feelings and their emotions, right? And then we don't understand why they might start losing interest, or why they might start going another direction, because we're kind of in denial about how hurtful that emotional response is. Does that make sense? Yeah? Hundreds of thousands of years worth of their contribution to mankind has come through hunting. Now we say the word hunting and women roll their eyes. And we don't understand how that's disrespectful, okay? So this is what it's like. It's crossing that bridge from your world into a man's world. And that hunting might come in the form of gathering fruits and vegetables. It might come in the form of doing different kinds of work. Let's say they're a graphic designer. It might come in the form of finishing things. But it's still the idea that for them, it's how they provide for their family. They go out, they get something they can take care of, okay? So if you want to see how prevalent this is in the male culture, think about men from all over the world wanting to be athletes, fighters, sportsmen, protectors when they grow up. Think about every movie that inspires the men libido being full of men doing violent and crazy things or brave heroic acts. Does that make sense? Yeah? If you think back 700 years ago, can you imagine the beliefs that men had about what they had to do in order to be hunters? Sometimes travel for months to track herds of animals, climb to the tops of trees to set up traps, potentially deal with big, dangerous animals, right? Lay in wait for them, fight them. So it's all this bravery, this heroics to be able to provide for the children, provide for the tribe. Yeah? Basically, this stuff is all the equivalent of being the best hunter in the tribe. Okay, or being the most... this is what they're playing up to in the army and in the police force when they say, you know, join the army, join a family, it's the same thing that they're tapping into on a commercial basis with companies when they offer men large wages to do things that are out of immorality. They're tapping into a man's need on a core level to be able to provide, okay? For a woman, historically speaking, ancestrally speaking, our beliefs around this is that for us to be worthy, we have to be healthy, we have to be fertile, we have to be beautiful. This is why women are so concerned with our looks, right? Because it's all about radiance and vitality. On a genetic level, that's about being able to provide children. Our survival, literally the survival of the reason you and I are standing here is because someone at some point thought that your ancestors would be fertile. Does that make sense? Not relevant now, but to your DNA, it might still be an issue, which is why so many women go bonkers if they become infertile, right? With the clock and the sex when they were having the ovulation and the absolute insanity of my life has no purpose if I don't have children. Same insanity that makes men jump off buildings. It's that core belief on a genetic level that my purpose is to have children for women, and on the genetic level for men, the equivalent is my purpose is to provide for the tribe or for her, okay? So I'll move this one forward. Okay. Because they're hunters, okay, predominantly, men have evolved to ignore distractions. Okay, that means when they focus, 99% of the time, they won't even be able to hear you. Ever been next to your boyfriend in the car, they're on their phone, they're so focused, you're trying to talk to them, you can't get through? Yeah? Asking them what they want for dinner when they're watching a TV program. Yeah? Trying to get anything through to them when they're watching football. Okay? Or they're working on the computer. They'll literally be like, I'm working. They've evolved completely differently than us because their survival depended on something different. Let's say you're a guy and you're riding, let's say you're Native American, you're riding on a horse and you have to catch this buffalo and there's a noise in the background. If you turn around to check on your friend, that buffalo could stick its horn to your side. Okay? And your friend could then get killed. So for you, focus is important. Does that make sense? On an army level, can you imagine if all the men decided to disappear and run away when there were bombs going off? They have to be able to focus and block out all distractions to survive. What happened to a man in the army 400 years ago if he got scared and he ran away? He got shot. Okay, so for them, not being able to focus culturally equals death. Okay, we're not talking about modern day because the body doesn't relate as if it's in the modern day. The body carries all the information you need to survive. If this whole civilization collapses overnight and it goes back to primal, your body's still got you covered. Does that make sense? Yeah? So their bodies are still functioning in this way. Okay, so sometimes women perceive this as men going hot and cold, okay, and we think they're doing it intentionally to mess us around. And we'll feel their energy completely pull away and shut off, either when they're at work or when they're playing video games or they're on their phone. They're not doing it intentionally. They're doing it because that's literally a matter of life and death for them on a genetic level. Does that resonate for everybody? Yeah? It used to drive me mad. Absolutely mad. It used to make me feel so insecure when my father, when my husband, when my brother were focused on their work. And I really thought that I was sitting there thinking, why are they ignoring me? You know, am I really that insignificant to you? Am I not important to you? Does that make sense? Yeah? I was so important to them. They were working their asses off. Right? But in my brain, because I was a woman and I thought they were like women, if I was important to them, they'd be talking to me all the time. Right? If you're important to a man, 9 times out of 10, he'll be interested in providing for you more than he's interested in having a conversation with you. right? And this is on a genetic level, not just on a conscious level. They may not even understand what they're doing. And this is why with Theta, you can have conflicting levels of belief. Okay? So from a guy that's been raised from 0 to 7 in a family that said the emotional part is important, he will get, oh, I should be spending more time with her. He'll probably even feel guilty about working so much. But on a core level, all he'll want to do is work harder. Does that make sense? Yeah? Because on a genetic level, that's what's saying, this is what makes them happy, this is what makes them survive. Okay? It's also a very funny one with this because it wasn't just their life and death, it was the life and death of the whole family. Okay, so then if they didn't bring back the food, nobody eats. It's not just them that doesn't eat. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah? So it's understanding that for them, it wasn't just for them, it was for everybody. Because before there was contraception, this was a major issue. Okay? Also, if you imagine, what happens when a man brings this giant buffalo back to the tribe? Celebration. There is dancing, there is fire, there is food. This is why people say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, right? Because the moment you feed him, the genetics kicks in that I'm enough, right? I did good, I provided, I'm enough. Okay? So this is why they've done these huge amounts of research, which is, for me, it's kind of hilarious when I was doing research on child development, infancy, and on the importance of family dinner. And I used to be like, what the hell is this? Why does family dinner have such an impact? Why is it that families that eat together are like 75% more likely to stay together? Because of this. It wasn't just the men that felt like they were enough when they came home with the food. We all felt good. It was celebration, bonding time. Does that make sense? Yeah? So never be afraid of putting a meal on the table before having a difficult conversation. You'll have all the ancestors on your side. Okay? It's a deep ceremonial thing. There's a reason why every single, like the turn of the equinox, Christmas, Easter, New Year, you have a feast. Okay? It tells your genetics on a tribal level that you can rest. Okay? That you can relax, that you can be at peace. If your guy is really stressed out, make him dinner. Okay? It makes a humongous difference. And it's funny because I always loved cooking, and my mum was always like, you know, I hate cooking, I don't really understand it. And for me, it really taps into that deep tribal thing where if I'm not allowed to cook Christmas dinner, you'll see me crying, right? Because it's like I cannot value what's been provided for me. So it's a big deal for me. But for men, it's a big deal because it means that you love them. What's the other thing that women used to do around the fire when a man came home dragging a big buffalo behind him? We danced. Okay? Outside of strip clubs, when does that happen nowadays? Okay? Men aren't just attracted to women dancing because they want sex. They're attracted to women dancing because it's an ancient sign of celebration. Okay? And it's a sign that you did good. I love you. You provided for me. You have a space in the tribe. Does that make sense? Yeah? So this dancing thing is a big, big deal. Okay? Both for women and for men. It liberates your femininity, but it also empowers you and empowers them. Because when you're dancing, you're happy. And for a man, what he wants the most is not sex, it's happiness. Okay? If you're happy, he's happy. Does that make sense? I don't know any women that are happy all the time. Okay? This makes men very insecure, but they've never had to deal with estrogen. Okay? So, but it's a real thing. The same way that we don't understand this hunter thing, they don't understand the period, childbearing, emotional roller coaster, the dragon that is having to ride hormones every month. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah? They don't understand. We do. The same way that that we don't understand why the hell they're staring at a computer and not listening to us, they don't understand why we can hear 50 things going on at the same time. You know? It really is confusing for them. It's actually annoying for them. Okay? So these are not things that are just like one man, one woman. The same things that piss off women piss off men in the other way around, because they're like, why are they doing that? I don't understand. So men were normally hunters, women were normally gatherers. That meant you would strap the baby to your back, you'd go into the fields, you collect the berries, you'd take care of the housing. Women were really active in those days. right? So we had a proactive role in maintaining the tribe and educating the children and making the medicines and gathering them. We're talking 700 years, it's a long time ago, okay? And the men would be gone for days doing this, sometimes months, because they'd be tracking or hunting. So we really had to fend for ourselves. But we had this instinct we have to take care of. Now, all of that work, this gathering work, when you go out into the meadow, is very detailed work. Okay, we have a few people who are already shamans, healers in this room, very powerful healers, very advanced souls. Okay, on that level, you needed to know how much of a plant to use, which plant to use internally, which plant to use as a poultice, which plant had to be dried, which plant had to be cooked for how long. All of this had to be remembered. Does that make sense? So women figured out that the best way to remember is to connect it with an emotion. Okay? So we created this system in our brain where literally it's hardwired that we have emotion connected with memory. Men don't have that. They actually don't biologically have that. Okay? We do. That's why we can tell the difference between all the different cries of a baby and what it means. Okay? That means if I come out from the field and I don't tell a woman everything in every minute detail, she thinks I can't trust her. Does that make sense? In modern days, imagine I've gone to a party, I come home, my best friend calls me and goes, "How did the party go?" And I'm like, "It was fine." Yeah? It's that feeling of, what the hell, why are you not talking to me? Okay? Same scenario, a man's been out to dinner with his business guys or whatever. He comes home, you say, "Sweetie, how was dinner?" He goes, "Oh, it was great." End of discussion. Okay? But to a woman, it means you're not trustworthy. To a man, that's just how they talked. What would happen to a hunter if the whole time that they were trying to track an animal down, they were talking? The animals run away. Right? You could hear them coming. So they spend hours, sometimes days together in silence, stalking prey. Okay, also too much noise was dangerous because people could hear them. So if they were in the territory of another tribe, let's say in the army, or they had to protect something, they had to keep it down. Okay, so for them, safety means I don't talk very much, the communication is perfect. My husband, Todd, bless his heart, he's always getting mad at me because I don't understand hand signals. It's like in the forest, this would mean we died. And I'm sitting there going, I don't know what you mean. Right? But it's true, in the forest, if we were in a, like with it, and there was a bunch of people, I wouldn't know what the hell he was trying to say. Okay? But it happens all the time. And this is what I mean by we're really, really different. And the gender differences cause problems. Okay, so having an intense level of clarity, it's very, very important to men, okay? So their focus, when we start nitpicking at it, when we start being like, you never pay any attention to me, you never have time for me, you're always working, that is like ripping off their balls, putting in a jar, sticking on top of the refrigerator, okay? To us, that's nothing. And I'm gonna tell you girls a secret, okay? Men might be physically stronger, emotionally, we are 1,000 times stronger than they are.
True.
Okay? And that's because we've had 1,000 years of evolution to practice this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If I'm sitting with my girlfriend, she can tell me anything about me, good or bad, and I can handle it. I can take it. And actually, I want her to tell me because that means that someone's got my back. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If a guy turns around to another guy and tells him bad things about him, it's a sign of disrespect. It leads to war. Okay? Men have had wars over conversations women have just sat in the kitchen about. Does that make sense? That's how much more emotionally sensitive a man is than a woman. We think they're just women. They're not. Do not make fun of their hair. Do not make fun of their work. Yes, Jenna. Stay. Right? Do not make fun of their work. Right? Do not make fun of what they're wearing. Don't do it. Okay? They can't take it. It's not fair. Okay? It's the same thing as a man making fun of you for being fat or making fun. Just don't do it. Okay? I know it's really tempting. Pick up the phone. Call your girlfriends. Okay? Don't do it to a guy. Any masculine guy that over a long period of time, there's one of two things that will happen, right? A masculine guy will either get angry at you and start distancing himself. So he'll get very, very busy at work, or he'll get very, very busy with his friends. So start hanging out with his friends all the time, watching football, all the rest of it, because he can't say with all the social conditioning, you fucking hurt my feelings. Okay? And then if you know you've hurt his feelings, he's upset at you because you perceived him as weak. Does that make sense? Okay? Different men are different. Okay, for a woman, if you've hurt her feelings, you go and tell her, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. For a man, if you've hurt his feelings and you go up to him and you say, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings, you didn't hurt my feelings. What feelings? Okay? Because it's do not perceive me as weak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so hypothetically, if you said to a man, or if you didn't say and you laughed at his latest haircut, how would you then apologise for hurting, upset, possibly hurting his feelings?
This is why they say men's egos are fragile, because they misunderstand this whole thing. For men it's not the same thing as women, so you can just apologise, but the best way is just to start putting deposits in their emotional bank account, and you do that by saying, you kind of correct yourself in the sense of, it's actually really growing on me. Yeah. I think it's really hot now, right?
Change your mind.
Yeah, it's things like that. It's like because women are allowed to change their mind, right? It's a women's prerogative. It's a women's prerogative that we can change our minds about shit.
Okay.
But trust me, they're very, 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 very sensitive. Okay, they're not allowed to say it. They're not allowed to show it. And for the love of God, don't call them sensitive. Okay, it's not the same thing as when you call a woman sensitive. To them, it's not a good thing. Okay, if you call a man sensitive, you may as well be saying you're weak across his forehead. So then you're going to start behaving weird and doing weird stuff just to prove he's not weak, and you're going to be like, what the hell's he doing? So don't call a man sensitive. A masculine man, okay? Okay, so respect the focus, respect the clarity. Praise is such an important thing for men, okay? You know how Louise Hay says, I love and approve of myself. Respect is approval, okay? It means to women, you constantly have to shine light up a man's ass 24 hours a day.
Oh, fucking Jesus.
Okay?
She runs out.
You'll get better at it, okay, when you understand what it's for. Okay? To them, it's the equivalent of them always loving you 24 hours a day. To them, approval is love. Okay? In any situation, whenever they were praised as kids, that was affection. Do you see men cuddling together on the sofa? No. Do you see men, unless they're at a hippie conference or they're high on drugs, hugging each other most of the time? No. The way they got approval when they were children was for people praising them. Right? The way they got approval from a woman even their first signs of approval in high school and university was when they competed for a woman's attention and won, right? Or when they got a kiss. Does that make sense? Yeah? If you think back to medieval times, a woman would give a man her handkerchief. She didn't give him a hug. Okay? I'm quickly also going to talk about for a lot of men, approaching women is the scariest thing in the universe. You might deal with this in clients if you're a Theta healer. You might deal with this with your partner if he doesn't come up to you and ask you to go on a date with him or stuff like that. In many, many cultures, there's two things that have created this in male consciousness. If you're new in a community and you see an attractive woman and you go up to her and you ask her out, right, before you know what the deal is, could you or could you not be hitting on someone's wife? Could that or could that not lead to you getting your ass kicked? Potentially the whole reason you're there to trade on business being destroyed. Yeah? So women for thousands of years were property. You do not damage, destroy, mess with or touch someone else's property. Okay? There are severe punishments for this. Does that make sense? Yeah, not what's happening today, but on a genetic level, 700 years worth of programming. Whose property is this woman? Okay, that's why men in high school, they'll be like, can you find out if she's with a boyfriend? Can you find out if this is happening? Because they're trying to figure out whose property is she? Okay, can I approach her without having my head cut off? Okay, this is a real danger for men. I am not kidding. Men have been put on boats and sent across oceans for approaching the wrong woman. Men have been put into slavery for approaching the wrong women. They've literally had their heads and balls cut off for approaching the wrong women. That's never happened to most women. Does that make sense? Okay? Historically also, because there was a preference for male babies over female babies, there was a shortage of women. Okay? So a lot of men are, if they had lifetimes where they weren't of the higher classes, sometimes, especially if they were in service, they were never going to be allowed to marry. If they were in the church, they were also never going to be allowed to marry. Okay? So there was all this huge fear about approaching women or coming up next to a woman. Right? So it's not silly, it's not crazy, it's the conditioning. It needs to be healed, it needs to be addressed. Does that make sense? Yeah? So if you're with a partner, even and you've married a partner, he never asks you out on dates or stuff like that, it's not a superficial, he doesn't want to spend time with you. There's something deeper coming up that needs to be resolved. Everybody with me? Yeah? He's not just neglecting you as a woman, there's a fear there on a subconscious level. He won't know what the hell it is. He'll just know it feels wrong to approach you. Yeah? Also, how many times do you think men get rejected compared to women? Way more. Right? So they have this constantly deal with this rejection. More men are going to divergence than women will by almost 50%. Okay? They don't get this idea that they have to be strong, they have to be tough, they have to keep it together, they have to provide for us from nowhere. They get it from us. Okay? So things have changed on very quickly, actually. Less than 500 years, things have changed dramatically because of the Industrial Revolution and things even like the last 10, 15 years because of the internet. But on a biological level, do you think all this stuff has changed? No? So can we do a quick healing? Can we ask her to do a quick healing and resolve this for us on a genetic level? Yeah? Creator of all that is, it is commanded that you resolve all of this for us on a genetic level and show us. Thank you. It's done, show me. There you go. There's still some people bouncing the downloads over here, but that's fine, we'll deal with you later. Don't worry, we will get to you later. So sometimes when there's deeper stuff on the issue, same thing for men and for women, particularly because there has been so much abuse of men to women in war zones and that kind of scenario. In Theta healing, we call it requiring deeper digging to pull the beliefs and the actual trauma that's blocking the new beliefs going in. Does that make sense? Yeah? So if any of these beliefs aren't going in for you, or if you're majorly triggered by this talk, I'm so sorry. And it's very, very possible to resolve it. Yeah, it's just, there's deeper stuff going on. Okay, so having emotional attachments, for example, being attached to a woman, being in love, feeling emotions, takes away from your ability to focus as a hunter. Okay? If you have to travel, let's say you're a trader, let's even move on forward from hunting, you have to travel all the time and you're constantly pining and homesick. Does that affect your ability to do your job? Are you less likely to bring home money? Yeah. So all these, the bigger the attachment they make, the harder it is for them to leave and get on with what they need to leave with in order to be able to take care of people. Okay? This isn't to say that men will never be emotionally attached. Of course they will, right? It just means that they can't be emotionally attached 24/7. Okay? For women, it's the opposite. If you can't be emotionally attached to a child 24/7, that child doesn't thrive, doesn't grow, doesn't become strong. Does that make sense? Your job, which is 3,000 years old on a daily level to be a good mother, is being screwed up by your inability to attach. So we're sitting here going, why the hell can't he attach to the kids? And he's going, why the hell is she so attached to everything? Right? We had different roles. We needed one another. Right? The future of humanity couldn't have survived without the women gathering, taking care of the tribe, taking care of the children. And we couldn't have survived without them bringing back the trade and keeping our relations with other tribes or countries running, without them bringing food back for the family. Does that make sense? We need each other. Okay? Yeah, so this is what we talked about earlier. Back on a DNA level, if he isn't a good hunter, he's worth nothing. He may as well be dead. This is a belief that can be pulled, released, and cleared. I suggest that if you're dating a guy and seriously pull and clear it as quickly as possible. Okay? No jumping off buildings on my watch because you've lost a job. It's just inappropriate. Also very important if you have male little boys or children. Okay? You don't want them carrying that belief around with them. Does that make sense? However, you do have to replace it with what their highest purpose is. If you pull that belief without giving them a purpose, they will feel lost, depressed, purposeless. Okay? Because this is their purpose in life. Does that make sense? Yeah? So a lot of women have cleared this in men, and they find their men are listless, not creative, not driven. They don't want to go out and achieve something. They just want to sit at home all day and play video games. Okay? That those men have gotten to the level of consciousness where they realize their purpose is not to hunt, but they don't understand what their purpose is. Does that make sense? So they don't understand they have a bigger purpose, a divine purpose. They don't understand that their purpose can be to provide for humanity, for the world, to be the light they're capable of being for this planet. And that's why they become listless and depressed. Okay? Okay. Okay, so if men don't feel like they're good enough as a provider or as a hunter, they don't want to show up in a relationship. Period. It's the equivalent of a woman not wanting to show up to a party because she feels ugly or fat that day. Okay? If a man can't provide, it's often what women feel when they're infertile or sick. Okay? This is because many women still carry the belief that their primary purpose is to provide children on a genetic level. Now, in the modern day, it's not so much about literally hunting for food, it's more about the ability to provide. Can you see how easy it would be for a man to feel like he's a bad provider? Yeah? Can you see how easily you could hurt him without even realizing you've hurt him? How many times, honestly, in your relationship have you sat in the bedroom going, I've done nothing, right? And he's upset at you because you've come across this, right? You don't understand what you're messing with. You're messing with 700 years of evolution. Okay, it's a strong force. They need love and compassion just the way we do. It's the same thing if we don't respect. If a man turns around to you and he says, you know, that he doesn't really want children, how hurt do you feel? It's the same thing if you turn around to him and go, I don't need stuff. Stop buying me gifts, stop providing for me. Right? It's that deep. Does that make sense? It's that level of rejection. It's a big deal. It doesn't make sense, but it's the evolution expression. So it's got us through the last 700 years. Okay? So every single young male grows up wanting to be the tribe leader or the alpha male. Okay? At least in his home, let him be. He's the king, you're the queen. You're equals, but people should still get to feel like they're the most important person in their own home. Does that make sense? Yeah? If he needs to figure something out, let him work it out with his friends, with his therapist, with his healer. Send him to a man's group. Do not become his therapist, his healer. Does that make sense? Yeah? You'll put yourself in a role you don't want and stop all the sex very abruptly. Okay? Okay. So modern man's greatest fears. So let's take it to the next level, okay? If you can not only understand a man's fears, like actually really love that man with his fears instead of thinking he shouldn't have them, you know, he's an idiot for thinking that way, and you can help him overcome those fears. Not by telling him to shut up or by acting like he shouldn't have those fears, but actually by building him up, by respecting him, by approving of him. Okay? Something really fucking magical happens. Okay? Really, really magical happens. He'll feel safe with you. Okay? That's really true, right? He'll feel safe with you, and it's huge when it comes to bringing you guys closer in the relationship. Okay? Now, women don't understand this because this is very different for men and women. So you know how we said earlier that if a woman tells me her greatest fears, I think, oh, she loves me, she trusts me? Yeah, we feel bonded. Men hate having their fears exposed. Let me say this again. Men hate having their fears exposed. Does that make sense? Yeah? You think he's a woman. You've told him what his fears are. You're scared of commitment. You're scared of spending time with me. You're scared of losing your job. You think you've done him a favor. You think you've understood him. He's really mad at you. Okay? Men do not like having their own fears exposed. Does that make sense? Okay? In man's world, that's not bonding. In man's world, that means war, possible death. Okay? So when you're trying to work with a man to heal his fears in a therapy session or whatever, don't try and do it this way. Okay, first thing you do in any sort of energetic reading with a man is you look for the good things. Okay? Always. Because it's genetic, it's very, very important. Okay? I'll say it again, okay? Men really hate having their fears exposed, telling someone their fears, showing their fears in their face. It's not a nice thing to do. It does not build trust or love. After having me say this to you, I know probably you still don't believe me. Why do you think men resist therapy so much? It's a room where people point out your fears. Does that make sense? Yeah, to them it brings up every single subconscious memory they've ever had of being killed, betrayed, of espionage, it's big deal, it's traumatic. Okay? So there's a lot of trust and deposits that need to be made before they can go in that direction. It's not that they don't want to work on the relationship. It's that they don't know how to, the same way that a woman would, right? If a woman is struggling with a relationship, normally what do? We talk about it. We sit down, we have a big conversation. It's not what men do. If you see men in business, even if you think about it, they don't sit down and talk about it. They go back, they confer with their men, they make contracts, they don't even talk to each other. Sometimes they text backwards and forwards, but that's it. Right? There is no conversation because the conversation could lead to possible death. Does that make sense? Think with me. There's a man with a castle on one hill and a man with a castle on another hill, right? The country is at war and they're trying to decide what side of the war they're on. And this castle over here goes, oh, I'm going to invite those people over here to have a discussion about what we're going to do and whether or not we're going to be on the same side or not. So they decide to invite these guys over here for dinner. And these guys say, okay, we're coming for dinner. And they come down the hill with their family, with their army, and go and stay with this other guy. And then in the middle of the night, this other guy decides he's going to take down all their men and their family whilst they're asleep. Men have this connected as war trauma. Does that make sense? Yeah, this idea of letting down your guard, emotionally sharing vulnerability, men have used it to kill each other. Okay, so for them it doesn't mean the same thing it means to us. To us, we squatted in tents together while we were having our periods and talked for 4 days at a time. If a woman invites you for dinner, she wants you to have dinner. Does that make sense? Yeah? You'll find that women who have been very powerful, who have been involved in politics, royal families, who have had incarnations with that level of hierarchy will have more fears about other women because they've experienced the same thing. Does that make sense? Yeah? Someone coming for dinner doesn't mean they're just coming for dinner. Right? This is why sometimes if you've come from a family background where your family had this sort of upper class thing, they'll totally freak out if someone's coming for dinner. Yeah? The whole house has to be clean, everything has to be perfect, the best dishes have to be taken down. Because there was a time when if you didn't please that person, bad things could happen. Does that make sense? Yeah? So it's starting to understand these things are not superficial, these rivers run deep. Okay? So men do not like having their fear exposed. You're not doing them a favor. It's not how it works, okay? So if you want to work with a man in this regard, even if you want to talk to a man about his feelings, major downloads about what emotions are, complete trauma completion, teaching his body on a DNA level that those traumas, those war traumas are over. Does that make sense? Yeah? Needs to be done. So, and what do men do when they get scared? They tend to either get angry, blame, they leave, they withdraw, they go cold, they stonewall. This is a fear response in men, okay? And any action that's made out of fear is the wrong action because he'll do things he'll regret later on. And the worst part of this is that you triggered those fears. You started it, okay? Because you treated your man like a woman. Does that make sense? Yeah? So he blames you for not understanding him. Okay? And on a very deep level, it's true. We don't understand them. We don't know why the hell they can't just talk about a problem like we do. Okay? And often, it's the bane of our existence. We think it's the reason why, you know, they can't get close to children, or they can't get close to us, or they're not doing better at work. On a genetic level, to them, they're still saving their own lives, okay? When you trigger these fears in a man, he'll start to have bad associations with you. He'll start avoiding you. He'll start avoiding relationships. If he's had enough women, his mother, his girlfriends is constantly trying to get to him by forcing him to share his deepest fears, he will completely shut down. Does that make sense? Yeah? This is normally what's happened to a guy that if you sit across the table from him on a date and he goes, I don't want to be in a relationship, this is what's happened. Does that make sense? To him, a relationship means the space where I have to discuss my deepest fears. I can't do that. I'm not good enough. I can't go there. Does that make sense? Yeah? It's a catch-22, because in order to heal, you have to face your deepest fears. Right? But for them, in order to survive, they had to hide their deepest fears. Right? So these conflicts have to be resolved on a history and a genetic level. So would it be all right if Creator showed you this deep truth about men? Yeah? And how to allow you to have the deepest compassion, and how to deal with and to feel in their heart what it is that they're experiencing and what they're trying to communicate with you when they don't know how to put it into words.
Yes.
Yeah? And how to do that without being angry or feeling like they should be able to do it. Can we download you all with patience?
Yes.
And release the belief that when you have to have patience with a man, you're turning into his mother.
Yes.
Yeah? And the difference between a man who wants to hurt you or who is abusive and a man who is in this situation genetically and emotionally.
Yes.
Yeah? How to tell the difference, that it's possible to tell the difference.
Yes.
And often because, there we go, that went in really well. Because minds are joined, this understanding is enough to create trust.
Yes.
If a guy's sitting there saying to me, I don't want to talk about it, and in my heart I feel that, and I'm like, whoa, there's some serious fear and pain here, and my response is compassion and respect, right? That connection of the minds creates a miracle, because he's not feeling forced, he's not feeling pushed, he's not feeling emotionally violated. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah? I am much more likely the next morning to have my husband walking up to me and saying, I want to talk about it. Okay? Because I let him be himself. Does that make sense? 9 times out of 10, when a man says, I don't want to talk about it, he's saying, I don't feel safe with you. You cannot make someone feel safe with you by forcing them into something. You can only make someone feel safe with you with respect, with love, with patience, with compassion. Does that make sense? Yeah? On the other hand, if you've been patient and compassionate and loving genuinely in your heart, not just in your head, not fake peace or compassion, like genuinely in your heart, you've had that practice and it's still not working, it's fair enough for you to move on. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah? But what's far more likely to happen is that your ego is going to lie to you. Your ego is going to tell you you're being patient and kind when really you're being a bitch. Okay? And then when the relationship doesn't work, you'll really sit there having no idea what you did, and you'll think that men are just assholes. Okay? This is like a major, major misunderstanding. So can we also resolve these misunderstandings? Yeah? And can Creator teach you that it's possible to live without these genetic and gender misunderstandings in intimate relationships?
Yes.
And how to allow men to be men.
Yes.
And how to respect their ancestry and their deep experiences.
Yes.
Okay, that's gone in. Darling, do you want to come and do your bit? Yeah. I thought I'd get him to come and talk to you about... Todd's been studying this for a long time now, so he's very good at it. But I thought you guys could do with a masculine man perspective. Yeah, you can have the seat. Move over here.
the hot seat indeed. I'm usually very comfortable about giving talks. A lot of you probably are aware I do a lot of talks on various things like lucid dreaming. This is not my area. This is her area. I was ambushed about an hour before you arrived. Can we have a male perspective? I think Lance did a great job. Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm really, Sky's already said everything I want to talk about, but picking up on a few things like the emotional stuff. I get it. Men just don't have the emotional muscles that women have. And I think any one of us men here will be happy to put our hands up and say that's the truth, that's how we feel. And I think, we are very strong physically, and we use that as cover, for our emotions. Since children, we've basically been, sort of, our names have been called. Our feelings have been called names. So if we're on the football pitch and we fall over, we're something like, oh, stop bellyache and get back up. So immediately our names are being targeted, our emotions are being targeted. And, that's how we've been sort of raised. So we've really learned to suppress our emotions a great deal. And I think, as much as men are sort of uncomfortable around strong women, I think women can be very uncomfortable about men who are showing vulnerability because they might mistake it for weakness. And Sky has said this, a lot about this tonight. And again, Brené Brown is really the expert on this area where, she'll use an example of, the men, the white knights on their horses. Fair enough, this is not, the tales that we still want to be, sort of telling to our children and our daughters that, men are going to always come and rescue you on their white horses. But if we do, realize that we've probably already got 20 arrows stuck in us, energetically, emotionally. And if we fall off our horse in those moments where we're being vulnerable, and then you're uncomfortable with what to you might seem like weakness because that's how you've been raised, to see men always as, this strong figure. And if you're used to us always using our physicality to portray strength, there's a real danger there. So if I fall off my horse, yeah, I want to get back up on that horse. But if you're a bitch towards me, you sort of literally talk to me as if I'm weak. When what I really need is to be vulnerable in that moment and for you to be able to feel that and to be able to sit in my pain. I've been with quite a few women in my life, relationship-wise, who were not able to sit with my pain. And I think, Lance and Ladrin can probably, and Wiggzaro as well, can probably, say that's what happens. So I think that's really important to really sort of get that. The love language stuff, which Sky started picking up on a bit, which, again, for us men here in the room, it's one of those emotional intelligences that we don't quite get. And if we're not sort of instructed in it, where are we going to learn it? So, a couple of years ago when Sky and I started doing some studying of this stuff together, started off with things like Anthony Robbins, because our relationship, we had a lot of turmoil in our relationship. We would argue almost every day.
Over nothing. Over
little, things that seemed like nothing. But, we're in pain for good reasons. It's legitimate suffering. And when, you really feel like you can't be vulnerable because you feel like, from a man's perspective, if I'm vulnerable, I'm seen as weak. That's a horrible thing because it's like you're in a catch-22. So we started learning stuff from Anthony Robbins, in his relationship development stuff. And he'd talk about things like, the 7 human needs. That stuff clicked, and it clicked really big time for me. Being able to understand, the difference from coming from a place, with love at your center versus something like significance at your center. We all need to feel certain. We all need to feel uncertain in the sense of having variety in our lives. And I think when you can start to understand, say for example from a man's perspective, I had no clue, when I wasn't giving Sky the attention that she needs from her perspective of how she feels loved. To me, the way I feel loved is like Sky's already picked up. For a lot of men, it's it's touch. You know, because, you know, through sex, it's one of our ways to express a feeling. For me, words of affirmation, you know, is quite a big one. So if this is how I feel loved, it's easy for me to maybe think that that's how Sky feels loved too. And I learned, you know, through some of the love languages stuff that just wasn't the case. That what pushed her buttons, you know, was me spending quality time with her. And, you know, like Lance has already talked about, you know, if I'm sexual towards Sky, you know, this is me expressing myself, you know, in a deep way. It's not, I don't want to just, you know, or even if I was single, if I want to have sex with a woman, in most of the cases, not just because I want to have sex. You know, there's something about you that, you know, maybe I just can't articulate, you know, feeling-wise. But it's not just sex for most men. It really isn't. It is a lot more than that. I've got a few notes because, again, this really isn't my area.
You're doing good.
Probably tell. But I do agree that, you know, for a man, it really is one of our deepest subconscious psychological needs is to be respected, to feel respected. You know, these are just a few notes. You know, to me, that means, you know, for my partner to feel that I'm strong, to feel that I'm smart and useful. You know, a lot of times, what do men try to do first? We try to fix things. You bring us your problems, and we're immediately like, I'm going to go to work. I'm going to sort your boss out. You know, we try to fix the problem, and you know, we're good at that sort of stuff. And yeah, fair enough. We have to learn, you know, to have that, you know, that vulnerability to where we can sit with your pain. You know, we find it hard. I used to find it. I still find it difficult. I get it wrong all the time still. You know, we live together, but the difference I think is where we would get stuck for a long, long, long time in the past. We don't get stuck for as long as we used to. So, you know, what does it mean? You know, for a man to feel respected, you know, if you have a problem, raise it to me kindly, and maybe, you know, to me instead of a crowd of people, like, you know, Sky pointed out earlier with the hand signal stuff. You know, that's classic hunter, you know, the men's stuff, the hunting. You know, we had to use hand signals, and in Sky's talks in the early days, she'd always run over by a lot of time, and she said, look, I'd like to contain it a bit more. I said, okay, I'll give you like a hand signal. And I'd suddenly give her 5 minutes to take a break. And she's like, I don't understand what you mean. And there's a whole kind of people. I feel so embarrassed. Or just like we had a great one just a couple weeks ago where I came in, literally she was the halfway mark for her talk. And I just gave her a signal. No, I did this. As in like time out for a break. And she literally like a couple minutes later, okay, we're going to wrap it up now and that's it. And it was like, so yeah, you know, but men and women, yeah, obviously are very fundamentally different. You know, treat a man like an equal. You know, if you really want the best out of the man, if you really want to have your feelings cherished, it is learning how to respect, you know, to respect us. You don't have to agree with us. You know, it's just learning, you know, to have that respect for like you would with a wild animal. You know, you're not going to approach, you know, like a mother bear and get between her and her cubs, are you? It's just like there's certain things that have to be respected, and I think, I'm really, again, this is out of my element. Yeah, one that probably I think a lot of men can identify with in particular, like with my father. You know, classically trained as a man just like I was from a boy. You know, you have to repress your feelings. If I made a mistake, I wouldn't hear the end of it for weeks. If I did something good, it was minutes I'd be praised. And when I'm around a woman who does the same thing, well, for me, it reminds me of my father. But it's something that, you know, again, because men, you know, it's one of those things, though, we really do in society where, you know, we literally pick on the weakness for ages. And we forget, like, if somebody does something right, why is that not like for days on end still praising that individual for getting it right. It's completely the opposite.
Well, can I just sorry.
Yeah.
I know, it is really difficult because my partner keeps telling me you always nag me about the thing I've done wrong. And the 1,000 things I've done right is never appreciated. And I said, well, taking the bins out, come on, I do it like 3 times a week, you do it once. And he goes, but you never mention it. So how would you actually say, what are we supposed to say when we think, oh, I feel like I'm doing it quite a lot of times, but he wants to be praised for it.
Just praise him. Seriously, just praise him. I know it feels unfair, but long term you'll be way better off.
And
Just praise him.
for many, for me in particular, I feel awkward when Sky is praising me. I do. I really do.
Because you're not used to it, or?
I'm very used to it in ways like, for example, if I give a talk and people come up to me, I've learned to have that grace, where people come up and say, that was a brilliant talk, and I say thank you. But when it comes to the relationship stuff still, I just feel like I'm severely underdeveloped in that way still, emotionally, where, there's a part of me that just doesn't believe it, and so.
I love you so much.
But this is, I've said to Sky many times, and she says, like when I give my talks, she says, look, when you talk about the relationship stuff, you talk far too much about your ex-wife and stories with your ex-wife instead of with your wife.
Can't sing the moments.
But I spent 17 years with my ex, and we were classically not getting what we needed from one another. We weren't feeling safe, and that was one of the big things. We weren't feeling very safe around each other. So one of the sort of symptoms was we were closed down with each other a lot. So if we had an argument, we stayed mad at each other for days, if not weeks. And it almost seemed like there was islands of happiness within a great expanse of an unhappy sort of relationship. And again, part of it was the respect thing and the cherishing thing. I didn't know how to cherish her feelings. I didn't know how to sort of just sit with, her pain without trying to fix it, because that's how I was raised. And vice versa, she was raised with needing to have her man sitting up on that white horse, and no matter how many arrows it's taken, if you fall off, get the fuck back on the horse anyhow. And that's painful for a guy not to be able to sort of have a woman deeply sit in that pain. A classic example is, like for a man, if I try to fix it straight away, if I try to fix your problem, I'm very uncomfortable with, your feelings. My feelings are now, I need to use my feelings almost as a way to close yours down. And it's horrible. Am I all right for a moment?
You're doing brilliant.
Yeah. Like the love languages and stuff. I mean, this has been a godsend to realize that we all do feel, love in different ways. So when I give Sky, my undivided attention, my presence on a daily basis, it's completely different from days and sometimes, a week if I'm really busy preparing for a talk and I'm feeling stressed, and both of us are maybe feeling, vulnerable, if we're feeling insecure, and we might be in a position to where we really need to receive something. It's kind of like, to me, it's that sign of an adulthood. It's learning to be generous. And it's that generosity when you can see other people really shut down, and you feel like, what? Like we have this conversation all the time, us guys here, because we know we can switch between masculine and feminine. Everybody does it. And, the dynamic of this stuff, a man wants to be able to be that rock, wants to let, the feminine energy just be the wind and just blow and blow and blow. And you're tempted sometimes to say things like, I just want to be the wind sometimes. I want to be able to cry. I want you to be the mountain. And I think when we're in a place where we can give, because we're in that state where we have enough energy to give, it's easier to do that. And you're feeling safe. Like for years, when I got divorced, I think it was 3 years, I was totally lost. I was going from one woman to the next woman, and finally Sky came into my life. And she was one of the only women that I allowed to stay in my life because she made me feel safe. You know, if I was like, if she could tell I was uncomfortable about something, she gave me a bit of space. She didn't force me to talk about it. You know, if you know, she'd make it, you know, sort of like, look, if you need to talk, I'm here. But she didn't really force me to talk about it, or she didn't need me to feel in a particular way, because that would have shown that she was uncomfortable with my feelings. So for her allowing me to feel in a certain way, allowing me to take the time to process something, that was important to me. And it made a huge difference, you know, where I wasn't sort of, I always thought it was, you know, okay, typically we think it's other people's stuff. And, you know, seeing Sky giving me the space to see that I had a lot of my own stuff that I wasn't willing to see, I was just in denial to. That helped a lot. That helped me to finally get closer to her, because I had intimacy issues. But, you know, if I'm not given space and just told, look, you know, this is your problem, you're emotionally constipated or whatever, you know, it's like, okay, that just makes me feel even worse. It makes me feel like I'm the problem, instead of, you know, that there's something that I need to work on. But I never got, you know, to get to that place because I didn't have somebody making me feel safe, making me feel certain that, you know, no matter how, you know, if I did need to cry, if I did need to, you know, share my feelings, that I wasn't going to have it used against me. I wasn't going to have like, you know, an emotional knife stuck in my back because my partner's now feeling, my God, he's showing weakness. That's
the other thing, guys. If someone shares something with you and then you have a fight a week later, don't be like, you're just like this because your dad did this. Yeah, it's not okay.
No.
Okay, it comes up a lot when I deal with couples and arguments. Whatever someone shares with you about their childhood, keep it out of fights. Yeah, it's not the time or the place.
Yeah, so I'll you know, close off with, because I haven't quite closed off with the love languages stuff, because again, it has made such a difference for me on a personal level, to where, you know, knowing that we all do feel loved in different ways. And this is why I brought up the ex stuff, you know, because if I would have genuinely had this knowledge when I was younger, it would have made a huge difference to my relationship at that time. You know, I would have probably still been in that relationship. I've got 3 children with my ex. And, you know, I would do things like, God, a good example, I could maybe spend quality time with her. You know, it was okay. But then suddenly I would say something like, you know, can I make you a cup of tea? And she'd light up. She'd be like, are you after sex? You know, and because she was a gift giving or acts of service, you know, that's what she liked. So if I was sort of in some sort of capacity of, you know, making tea or dinner or putting up a shelf, that's what made her feel loved. You know, and then when I was with Sky, you know, I'm thinking, okay, the way I feel love is touch, so I'll touch Sky, or I feel love for affirmation.
Hey, most of the time that works.
But, yeah, for sure it does, and that's another thing I really appreciate about Sky. She didn't just think, you know, it was just about sex. I mean, in my notes, you know, to me, you know, to feel desired, you know, and not just to sort of ever say it's just sex or belittle a man's need, you know, to be physical. You know, truly desiring a man, thinking and feeling like, you know, he is emotionally and physically attractive. You know, wanting to touch, you know, when Sky and I really feel that she wants to touch me, that's like an aphrodisiac. That's really powerful for me. When I really feel that, you know, I've got her attention, you know, in that way, my God, I mean, that's such a turn on to me. You know, when I know she really wants to make love to me, God sake. You know, it's like it's a major act of love and feeling like I belong.
Yeah, that making, you know, the fake sex thing where you have sex with a guy because he wants to have sex, don't do that.
No. I think, you know, to me there's nothing really superficial about it from my perspective. You know, if I come at Sky and I'm hyper,
yeah.
or which I can on occasion, and I might seem like a chav, fair enough. There's that unconditional loving response can be no, that energy doesn't work for me right now. She might be in her masculine still. She's been on a Theta healing course for weeks now on the weekends, and all day long she's a lot in her masculine, and when she comes home she's going to need 30 minutes of goddess time minimum, and that means me, one, allowing her to meta report. Have you gone through meta reporting? So, letting her tell me about her day, giving her that presence because she's a
Like it's got a name. Masculine name. Give me the report. I can deal with the report.
But it's exactly what it is. Like Sky was talking about earlier. If you're a gatherer, you would literally, the women would come back and they would report about the meadow to the other women. You'll find the berries in that corner of the meadow. You'll find, the stream. There's a stream on that corner of the meadow. It's meadow reporting.
Yeah, the wolves will be here tomorrow.
Yeah.
So,
But no, we have a rule that I get to meta report for 15 minutes, and then if he can't concentrate for longer than that, I still keep going and he doesn't have to listen. That's the research shows with Anthony Robbins that literally the longest a man can go normally with a woman just talking at him is 15 minutes, 20 minutes if you're on a date and he wants sex, but 15 minutes otherwise. So
yeah,
so you see his eyes glazing over.
But that shows where I have emotional muscles to develop, and that's fine. For me to see an area where I'm sort of wounded, fine. It's a sign for me it's an area to work on, and that's great. But as much as possible, for me to really get that when we're both in that place of maybe feeling insecure, Course in Miracles talks about it. It's that moment where you realize, if I'm less insane in this moment, it's that classic giving to receive. I need to give right there. If I'm the one that's less insane, the one that's less in pain, I need to give, because it has to start from one of us, and if we start building up those emotional bank accounts, it makes a difference, because when I do make a withdrawal, if I'm in the black, it's not so bad. But if every day I'm not giving Sky, making her feel loved in the way that she needs to feel loved, her love language, presence, I really have noticed that the relationship gets strained. So yeah, that's.
I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
It's interesting listening to seeing two of you together, and the thing that came out strongest, and I don't know if other people feel this way as well, is that the reason why the relationship is working so well now is because you have this foundation that most of us have never started from in the first place. Do you know what I mean? So it's lovely that you've shared that with us. The fact that you've had to go
it's important.
to the fact that you both understand the rules, if you like, and you've come together with the joint knowledge that you understand the rules and she understands the rules, and it seems right. Because
it's kind of like we say it a lot. I mean, the four of us, Ladder and Lance and myself and Sky, we, because to see Lance and Ladder in particular, going through struggles relationship-wise. Ladder in particular is single, and he's had some challenging stuff. He's single. It's a great one. But we live here together, and we're learning this stuff together, and we really do feel like it's like a language that we've started to understand, and it really does make a really big difference. The way that we communicate with each other, even with Lance. The three of us men, when we talk with each other, like Sky was saying earlier, if I just suddenly go in for the attack on my male friend, a battle can ensue, because that's how we've in a sense been conditioned. So it's learning again to have that vulnerability with our male friends, to allow them to have those moments to where they can share their feelings without us feeling, oh man, just man up, and beat your chest or whatever. And it really does make a difference, and it does seem like we're in a bubble sometimes.
On a subconscious level, if your body, particularly for men, they battled for freedom and they battled for truth. So they might even pick a fight so they can find the freedom or they can find the truth, right? And unless that's resolved on a genetic level, it can keep recurring over and over again, because they've never been able to get that depth of communication, even that depth of physical intimacy or sex, until the battle was over. right? So it's a very, very deep thing.
Yeah, and the one thing that I'm learning, crosses all these male-female boundaries, which is helping me a lot more, is to understand that, I do have a role in my relationship, with Sky. My role is not to see, her guilt and stuff. My role is learning to make her feel loved, to really see her innocence and stuff. Sometimes like, there's certain things like the hand signal stuff. I have to realize she's not doing that on purpose. She's not trying to wind me up on purpose. She's not trying to embarrass me. I have to learn to see the innocence in that, whatever it is. And, if she does have stuff, if she has her stuff that needs to be seen, if the universe really needs her to see it, it'll bring it up in an organic way. I don't need to personally monitor her spiritual growth. That doesn't mean I'm going to be a doormat. It doesn't mean I'm just going to let her walk all over me. If I need to be firm, you can be loving and be firm. You can say, no, that hurts when you do that. No, you can't keep telling me off, in front of other people. No, you can't keep doing this. There's loving ways to say no. There's merciful ways to say no. There's compassionate ways to say no.
And we act like if someone's a spiritual teacher, they shouldn't make mistakes. Or they should have done all their spiritual work already. And if not, something that's particularly vicious in spiritual relationships is people going after people's spiritual purpose or their practice or their clients. Because the event that I'm at, there was one lady there she'd had a fight with her partner, and he literally came to the event to try and embarrass her in front of us. Okay, and if I wish it was the first time that kind of situation has arisen. Sometimes in our fights in the beginning, we used to use like, how could you teach that in a talk and then treat me like that tomorrow? Those kind of situations, and particularly in spiritual relationships, because you almost have this idealized version of the person. You kind of vilify them even more because they're pretending to be someone they're not. They're actually a bad person. They're pretending to be a good person, and it's what Todd said. It's learning to see the innocence in people and how. Particularly after you've given a talk like that, any issues that are unresolved will come to the surface for resolving.
Oh wow, will they ever?
How do you start that conversation? There must have been a point in the relationship, sorry, this is like psychoanalyzing relationship. There must have been a point in the relationship where you, just on an ordinary level, in the beginning where there was the difficulties and the challenges there, and it wasn't comfortable, and like you said, there were arguments at the beginning. What point then, or how did you have the conversation that says, right, look, something's not working in the dynamic of how we're communicating, but we want to be together. How do you begin the work? Because a lot of people would split up, and that's what
we were really on the verge of splitting up.
Many times.
We admitted that we needed to work on it together, and to be honest, I just went out and I bought the Anthony Robbins Ultimate Relationship thing because I was like, this, I realized that the therapy thing was never going to work for us because of all these war traumas and shits, and that we were never going to make it there. That if I had to go into that room, it wouldn't resolve anything because there was so much trauma coming up that I wouldn't be able to get the vulnerability in that space. And I asked my angels, I remember sitting in my bedroom, my mum's house, going, what the fuck do I do? And they were like, he needs a man. He needs a man teaching men how to be masculine.
And I did. One of the first things that Anthony Robinson said in that course was, don't ever say, I'm leaving this relationship. How unsafe am I going to make Sky feel if I completely, sort of regularly say things like that, or use that as leverage for her to sort of just behave in the way I need her to behave, because I think, I can't love you until you behave in the way I need you to behave. Yeah.
But he radically changed when we watched the Anthony Robbins thing together. I radically changed. And it was also the equal responsibility thing. It was realizing that, because your ego is always like, oh, it's him. Because men are louder, they're more aggressive, they're more jealous, and you can see what they're doing because they don't pretend that they like you when they don't, right? Women will be sitting there pretending everything's okay when really they want to stab you in the back, right? Or they wish you were dead, or they wish you would just leave. There's this passive aggression thing with women where they're pretending they're okay with things years after they're okay with things. Does that make sense? Even sometimes to themselves, we go into deep denial. We can't handle our own emotions in that department. Women really struggle to handle our own jealousy, our own anger, our own aggression towards other women. We would rather pretend that it's not there. right? Have you ever tried to have a conversation with another woman when something's gone wrong about her feelings, and she'll be like, oh, I didn't feel that way about you, it's just a misunderstanding, right? The actual feelings, that, to be honest, the roughness of them, the pain of them is hidden, it's devalued. A man won't do that. If a man is hating you right now, he'll hate you. Right? In that way, it's much easier because they won't masquerade. It's just obvious. With women, we can pretend for a lot longer, and then we'll be bitching to our girlfriends, bitching to our mothers, telling everybody around us how much of an idiot this guy we're with is, but telling everybody except him, right? Because when we tell him, he gets angry. So for me, what I would recommend is genuinely, if it's the man that's showing the most fear, a man, like a really masculine man that looks masculine, that's teaching about relationships, your best bet is to get a seminar, put it on in the car, put it on in the room, because he'll start to connect with that man. Particularly if you grew up in an environment where only men were allowed to make the rules, or only men were allowed to teach men, and if he was taught by women, then he was showing weakness or vulnerability, because then that man will be the bridge for him creating respect for women. And that's the way it's supposed to be. Your fathers were supposed to teach little boys how to respect women, how to cherish women, and when that doesn't happen, a healing has to happen in another way, right? If it's not our fathers, then it can be the divine father, it can be that holy energy coming through another man, but it still needs to happen. That lesson still needs to occur. And then the other thing is, don't stop. Do not sit on your laurels. Mastery doesn't come overnight. Mastery is a lifetime's work.
Yeah.
You know, do not stop. Every time I stop, something dumb happens.
Yeah, and you know, the ego, as we all know, it will not go quietly.
No.
If you're not proactively practicing love, you're in trouble.
Yeah, exactly, because the fear mind is as proactive as love is. So it is really sort of the practice side of this all the time. Waking up and me actually maybe for a few minutes having that mantra. My role in Sky's life is to make her feel loved.
He brought me tea and maybe pancakes this week.
My role is to make her, to see her innocence. I mean, that's a powerful mantra for me. To say something like that when I get out of bed in the morning. To look at, what is my role, to really understand my role in this relationship. Yeah? I'll leave there, yeah.
I love you.
That was lovely.
Proof that there are good men in the world. Right? Okay. Where am I going?
That was so good.
Okay, I don't need that anymore. Done that. Okay. So Todd was talking about emotional bank accounts, and I'm going to kind of clarify that a bit. So there's a guy called Gary Chapman, and he wrote a book called The 5 Love Languages. If you guys want to pick it up, it's a very good book. In that book, he explains that people have emotional bank accounts. He explains emotions as a bank account theory. So every time you do something good for a person, you make a deposit. Every time you do something negative, you make a withdrawal. Okay? The same way that it works with money. You make enough deposits, you start living off the interest, you become very rich, you can live off of the compound interest. Emotionally, that means you give enough love to a person, you can, in the way that they need to be loved, and you can literally be loved for the rest of your life without having to do anything else. Looks effortless, looks easy. People are staring at your relationship and wondering, how did that happen? Right? Same with the other way around. You get into enough debt, and it starts to compound until eventually it's like it's a sinking ship. Does that make sense? Yeah? So the reason I bring this up is for you, Anna, right? Is that in the beginning, when a relationship gets into debt, the first person who goes making a deposit, doesn't matter who it is, right? Because in the end, both of you get so much out of it, right? It's about recognizing, for me, with my relationship, I had to go first. Right? Even though I felt like, and at that point my ego was really like, it's not you, it's him. I had to go first. I didn't just have to go first, I had to go deep, right? Because I had to prove my sincerity. Because men have been pulled into enough therapy sessions with women who only want to blame them for everything. And it's not fair. Does that make sense? Yeah? You just saw my husband cry over his emotional inadequacies. How much do you think it hurts when we look at them and think that they're emotionally retarded? They know that they're struggling with their emotions. It scares the bejesus out of them. Right? They don't need someone pointing to them and telling them, ha ha, you're not emotionally evolved. Does that make sense? Yeah, they need the deposits. They need to sit down and do things together. Because one of the most important things about me and Todd doing things like the Anthony Robbins program, it's a series of 10 videos that you watch together that are an hour and a half long. But what it does is it creates a shared vocabulary. It meant that when we were talking about something, we were talking about the same thing. Whereas before it was like we had a different language. Does that make sense? Yeah? When I said you're not meeting my needs, he knew I meant one of the 6 core human needs. Before that, he was like, what is a need? Does that, to me, it's a given, but you have never ever assume that your man has had any emotional education, period. Chances are he did not. Chances are instead of an emotional education, he had emotional abuse. I wish that wasn't the world we lived in. Most of the time nowadays it still is. Okay? It's the same thing with women in sexuality. Most women have been sexually abused, right, in one way or another. You can't walk in there and assume that she's going to be great with sexuality, because chances are she's actually got trauma in that area. Okay? So it's that innocence, it's recognizing that people aren't doing it on purpose. You know, they just don't have that level of control. Okay? The same way that we wouldn't like a man to constantly point out how physically weak you are compared to him, don't constantly point out how emotionally weak he is compared to you. Yeah? Empower him, help him to grow, believe that he can. So I just wanted to really emphasize this, okay? So the first things first is that we all gravitate towards people and things in our life that make us feel like we're enough, always. Okay? Marianne Williamson has an amazing story about this, because she said she was with a guy that she really loved, and he left her for another woman. And she was saying, he was packing up his bag, and she was going, you just love her because she tells you what you want to hear. Right? She just tells you what you want to hear. She just blows smoke up your ass all the time, meaning that that woman was dishonest with him. Right? And she said he just looked at her like, yeah. And at the time she didn't get it. But after years of practicing the Course in Miracles, she realized, of course he wants to be with the woman who approves of him, appreciates him, telling him he's a wonderful person every day. Right? That wasn't lies, that was the truth about him. That woman was seeing what was real about him. She was seeing his soul, she was seeing his heart instead of his fear and his inadequacies. Does that make sense? Yeah? So this is what I was leading to, is kindness is powerful. If you actually practice it every day, it will heal things. People's behavior will change. Right? But sometimes you have to take that first step. And when you do, the first thing that person, chances are, is going to do, 9 times out of 10, is challenge you. Because they don't want to fall in love with you again and go deep with you again just for you to give up on them and disappear. Does that make sense? Yeah? If you say, I'm going to try and really commit to this relationship, to go deeper with you, we're going to work this out, you have to mean it. And that's like with Theta healing, that's those virtues that we were talking about. That's mastering integrity on a deep level. That's deeper than, because some people just say, I want to work on the relationship so they can get rid of the guilt of leaving. And they set up their partner for failure on a subconscious level. Does that make sense? Yeah? So they're like, I tried everything. I read this book, I went to the therapist, he wouldn't come with me, I did this, I did that. And then they're like, they feel like absolution, like I don't have to feel guilty, I tried everything. Right? It's like being a teacher. If I'm in a class full of students and the class I'm teaching doesn't work, I have to change the way I'm teaching. Does that make sense? That was one of the biggest things I realized with my relationship with Todd. If he wasn't understanding, I wasn't communicating. Period. Right? I had to change the way I communicated. I had to change what I did. And it was an act of faith. Because for me, every bone in my body was screaming, he's going to take advantage of me. He's going to make a fool out of me. This isn't going to work. Does that make sense? Yeah? And then I'll be humiliated, or this relationship will get more abusive. So there is a huge difference between pleasing a man and giving true love, respect, and honor to a man. Okay? So would you guys like to know the difference?
Yes.
And that there is a huge difference. And that when you're pleasing someone, you're pretending to give love, pretending to give respect, in the hopes that you can manipulate them into doing what you wanted them to do. Right? It's control masquerading as love. Men don't fall for it. It doesn't work. Even if it works for a short period of time, they end up hating you. Okay? So you can't fake this. You actually have to have the integrity to start loving them again, even if it's hard. Does that make sense? To start believing in the relationship, even if it's like, doesn't make any sense, because it's a 100% responsibility instead of 95, 96, 97 that creates the miracles. And it's a course in miracles, not a course in kind of ish slow healing. Okay? If you want instant miracles, you have to have infinite patience. So one of the biggest phrases in A Course in Miracles, literally infinite patience brings immediate results. Right? Because it's 100% responsibility. It was so hard for me to learn how to respect a man. I just finished another 4-week course. I still think I only understand about 30%. Right? But the quality of my relationships, my ability to connect, both as a friend and as a wife, it's been huge. Even 6 months ago, I don't think if I'd asked, I would have been able to get Todd to talk to you on the depth he's talked to. And that's because he feels so much safer. Does that make sense? Yeah? But on that level, because if we're so much emotionally stronger, is that any different than a guy carrying us over a river? Right? It's chivalry on the female side. Does that make sense? We have to create an education, emotional, social, spiritual, that stops this kind of emotional abuse from happening to our sons and to our partners. It's not okay. Right? Also, most men carry a lot of anger and aggression at women because from an infancy level. So even look at the royal family, for example, in Britain. In the royal family, at age 2, the male sons were taken from the mother and taken to a castle in Wales to be educated by male tutors almost 8 miles away. Do you or do you not think that a 2-year-old is going to hate their mum for allowing that to happen? Yeah? There's deep trauma there around the feminine, and not just betrayal of the father, betrayal of the mother. Okay? So we have a responsibility in that regard to remember that. Okay? Okay, so pleasing is genuinely something you never want to do, period. It won't get you what you want. It will make him feel like you're a low-value woman. It rarely works out. Okay, so some good things to say to men. Okay, I felt so weird writing this down. It brought up all my "I'm manipulating men" shit to the surface. So we can clear that in a minute. But literally, this is one of my favorite ones. I know there's a hidden strength inside of you and you can handle anything that comes your way. Okay, whenever I get a problem, a man sharing a problem with me, this is one of the things that I share. Whoa, you're so good at this. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether it's mini golf, whether it's putting up the shelf, it doesn't matter what it is. Anything he's good at, notice it, praise it, say it. Okay? You'll be amazed if you try a week of nothing but praise with a guy, especially if you mean it. The turnaround is insane. I've seen marriages saved because of this. I've seen marriages go from borderline violent to good because of this. Okay, it's like a miracle. It's a miracle thing. It's just gratitude, right? Gratitude works miracles, but it is hugely, hugely powerful. It's amazing that you have so much influence, respect from the people around you. Okay? Noticing that other people respect them, telling them how much you respect them. Yeah? I started, for the first time in my life, I started telling my husband and the men how much I respected them as men in my life. Okay, how much they were respected and influenced by other people, how much I noticed. Because for me, that's not a big deal. But for men, that's a big deal. Does that make sense? Yeah? I had a similar thing as Todd, and I think most of you did as well, that you probably got beaten up for weeks over the mistakes you made and not much praise for what you did do right. Yeah? In A Course in Miracles, it says that to teach is to demonstrate. Okay? Teaching is not sharing information, it's the demonstration of loving practice. So if I want my husband to start praising me more, I need to start praising all the time. Does that make sense? Yeah? And then it's like the emotional bank account. In the beginning, the praise is just paying off the debt. But then the moment you get above that red line and you start actually putting in deposits and you're out of debt, suddenly it starts to accumulate interest. Suddenly it starts to gather big returns. Yeah? I always know this happens when I start getting lots of presents. But it depends what language your partner is. He might book a weekend away if he's a quality time guy. He might just start praising you more. If he's a words of affirmation guy, he might be all over you all the time if he's a physical touch guy, but you'll know the minute the tide turns. Okay? It's amazing how generous you are, how big a heart you have, how good you are at taking care of me. Okay? It's so important to them. The number of times I've seen a guy burst into a smile just because I've said those words. You know, I will say those words, I try and say them at least 3 or 4 times an evening. Okay? Never something I would say before, something I say all the time now. It shows respect. I used to nag my husband for working so much. Now I tell him how proud I am that I have such a hard-working man in my life. That he gets out of bed in the morning, that he puts so much effort and so much passion into his life, that he makes such a great contribution to the lives of others. Right? And that's the difference. If when I met him, in comparison to who I am now, I was an immature little girl. Right? Because of the effort that I put in. Becoming a mature woman has nothing to do with age and everything to do with commitment to your own womanhood. Right? You can be in your 50s and still be doing the kind of stuff we're talking about today. I grew up with a mum who in many ways respected my father and in many ways didn't know how. She knew how to respect him sexually, she knew how to respect his work. She had no idea how to respect him emotionally. She was constantly hurting him in that way. Right? It was really hard for me to learn how to respect a man emotionally, triggered every single abuse issue I had. Right? They're just going to get away with it. Every single punishment issue will come to the surface. But that's because in the presence of love, everything that's not love will come to the surface to be resolved. Right? Okay, so this is the thing about pleasing. Okay, anything that's predictable kills the release of dopamine in the brain. Okay, so if you're just going through the motions in a relationship, if you're not giving real presence, real love, real attention, and it's predictable that you're just going to pretend the day away, your man will stop releasing dopamine and oxytocin when he sees you. Okay? It's biological, biochemical. So this woman kind of being constantly changing mood, constantly changing clothes, constantly creating variety is an ancient thing because we know that they need constant variety. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Women constantly create variety, men constantly create certainty. Right? It's just an in the genetics thing. Anything that's predictable gets very boring very quickly. Anyone who's ever worked knows this. And you start to take it for granted at best. At worst, you start to resent it. Okay? So proactively create variety in your relationships. Okay? Proactively make an effort. I was one of the biggest things Marion Williamson brought to my attention was, how we dress. Because my mum she always did this, she would always change clothes before my father came home. And I thought it was kind of, going out of the way, because, honest to God, he never changed clothes for her, right? But it's that understanding that men are visual. They say, if there's a really amazing author called Dr. Pat Allen, she's in her 80s now. She still teaches this stuff in LA. But she did studies like on the biology of men and the biology of women, like in depth to what happens chemically wise. And one of the things she teaches is that women fall in love with their ears, men fall in love with their eyes. Okay? So that's something, now Todd says sometimes he bounds in and he's hyperactive and he's acting a bit like a chav. Yeah? 9 times out of 10 I'll say to him, women fall in love with their ears. Right? Because if a guy says something to you that makes you feel like a piece of meat or like he's not interested in what your feelings are, suddenly we start to kind of produce less dopamine. But if a woman doesn't take care of her appearance or how she looks, men start to produce less oxytocin and dopamine. Okay? It's a hardwired biological thing. But yeah, go and look her up. She does radio shows every week and they're free to access. So you can access them all the time. Okay. So commitment issues. I thought you guys would like this, so I put it in. Okay. So obligations kill a man's freedom. Okay. The things men want most in life: respect, freedom. Those are like the 2 main emotional things that they're looking for. Okay. Those things make men feel loved. So obligations kill a man's freedom. By committing to one woman, a man feels like he's cutting off all other options with any other woman. It's not that men always want to be with other women, it's the fact that he doesn't like not having the freedom to choose. Okay, he loses his freedom. Okay? Men are deathly afraid they're going to lose their freedom in a so-called committed relationship, lose their resources, because so many women are so selfish that they take everything from men. Okay? This still happens. Okay, there's a lot of women who will marry a rich guy or who will get pregnant by a rich guy and try and take all his money and resources. It does still happen. Does that make sense? Yeah? It's not a superficial fear. And what happened? The other way that this happens with women, bless us, right?
Exchange.
Yeah.
They know what the money is sometimes.
Yes, sadly. But what I'm okay. So from this perspective, often what happens is that we'll be with a man who deeply loves us and we deeply love him. But when he becomes our husband or we have children with him, suddenly it's not that we want to constrict freedom, but if anything happens to them, the provider for the children, the provider for the home is gone. Does that make sense? So we become more controlling because we're more afraid. Does that make sense? Yeah? The more we try and hold on, the more they try and push away. Okay? And when that happens, they normally end up doing crazy things that they shouldn't be doing, right? And then it gets mistaken for taking all of their stuff when really it's the belief of, I don't know what I'd do without you. I couldn't survive if you died. And a lot of women have trauma of men going off to war and never coming back, of men going out in car rides and driving too fast, because men take more risks than women. All right, women have a longer life expectancy. So that kicks in, and the same thing can happen, right? Notice that when I brought up women sometimes abusing men, there was triggering in the room. There's a tacit, unspoken agreement that women don't abuse men, men only abuse women. Does that make sense? Yeah? Just because women don't physically abuse men doesn't mean they don't financially, emotionally, spiritually abuse men. Okay? And it's equally not okay. Right? It does happen. I wish, it's just like all men. I wish some men didn't have bad intentions, but there are men out there that do. And I wish women didn't have bad intentions. There are some women out there that do. I'm not like that. So in my heart, I want to believe it doesn't exist. Okay? But we had a bunch of police officers in here last week because Todd and I, we had an issue on the way home. And they were telling us how pretty much every single physical assault they have is from a woman. That women bite them, that they spit in their eyes, that they pull their hair, and because the women they don't fight back, right? So with a guy, if a guy jumps on them, they'd instantly pin them to a wall. With a woman, they don't. Okay? Never something I've had to experience, right? But there has been physical abuse in this room towards men that I know. And especially the more it becomes normal to see women doing violent things on TV, which I think is another part of the conspiracy theory, it's becoming more and more common. Okay, I wish it wasn't, but it is. Okay, so some women, okay, so now some women ask, why do men pull away when they start to fall in love? Okay, so men don't actually pull away when they fall in love, but they pull away if they feel like they're too attached. Okay, so there's a difference between love and control. Okay, they look the same on the outside, they feel different on the inside. Okay, how many women have been in a relationship with a guy that though he was very loving, they felt controlled? Yeah, it felt like they were suffocating, right? Because even if they're being very loving on the outside, if the energy they're using is one of control, you stop being able to breathe. It's the same thing for men and women. Does that make sense? So and the only way to really build love with a man is through connection and attraction. Okay, so connection you build through respect, attraction you build through words of affirmation, through physical touch, through desiring a man. Now, as women, we're pretty much taught you don't desire men, men desire you. Does that make sense? Yeah, we're actually afraid. I was deathly afraid, and many of the women I've worked with have been deathly afraid that if they were sexually attracted to any man, then twofold. If they were with a guy, then the guy they were with would get jealous. And if they weren't, then they would be calling, if they were attracted to a man, then it was like they were saying yes to everything. Does that make sense? Yeah? It's like you can't want to say hi and then say no to a kiss or say no to making love. Like if you're attracted, then you bring whatever happens on yourself. Like there's no consent in between. Does that make sense? Yeah? That's generations of religious, spiritual, physical, sexual abuse. That if a woman wants a man, then there's something that she's a slut basically, and she deserves whatever comes her way. Yeah, because men are animals, right? It's a belief. Can we pull it?
Yes.
Yeah? So Creator of all that is, it's commanded that these beliefs be pulled, cleared, resolved on a history level, and replaced with unconditional love and with how to desire a man, that it's possible, that we can, that it's safe to, that we know when to, how to, and what it feels like to allow yourself to truly desire and to be able to give that gift of desiring, and how to give it freely and know that it is a gift and that it is deeper than sex. It is real love. Okay. That went in nicely. Okay. Okay. So, would you like Creator's definition of commitment?
Yes.
Yeah? Creator's perspective, definition, understanding in all of its aspects? And would you like your definition to be the same as Creator's?
Yes.
And would you like to know how to create commitment with a man through attraction and connection instead of with control?
Yes.
And how to tell the difference? And how to be honest with yourself about which one you're using?
Yeah.
Yeah? There we go. And can Creator cut all ties of control that you have with any men in your life or have had?
Yes.
And can Creator teach you that it's possible to be in a healthy relationship without being disrespected, without having to control a man?
Yes.
And that you can do this with attraction, with love, with integrity,
Yeah.
and with attraction.
Yes.
So would you like to, oh, we've done that. So would you like Creator's perspective and definition of men?
Yes.
And for your definition to be the same as Creator's?
Yes.
And can we release the belief that men don't show up the way we want them to because they don't like, love women, or they don't like or love us?
Yes.
And can we be shown Creator's truth of the reason why they're actually sometimes not showing up?
Yes.
Of where they are actually wounded?
Yes.
And be open to seeing that truth?
Yes.
And can Creator release the anger and the rage that we have towards men?
Yes.
And any part of us that's being stubborn about not wanting to see their point of view? Point of view? They don't have a point of view. Yeah? And any ways in which you've obligated men to pass your tests so that you would know that they loved you?
Yes.
And would you like to just know that they love you?
Yes.
And would you like to know that it's possible to live without setting a man up for failure?
Yes.
And without having to set having other people set you up for failure?
Yes.
Oop. Perfect. Aren't you a miracle worker, Ladrin? Okay. So can Creator teach you the difference between a man being focused and in hunter mode and him ignoring you and not loving you?
Yes.
Would you like to know how to be in a relationship with a man without creating battles or fights?
Yes.
Would you like to know that it's possible to know the truth about your partner without having to battle with him to get to the truth?
Yes.
Would you like to know how to share your life with a man, your bed, your body, your feelings, your soul and your heart?
Yes.
How to give him your respect and your forgiveness without resentment, without holding back, without fear, without shame?
Yes.
Can we teach your DNA the difference between male DNA and female DNA, and that both are human?
Yes.
And that it's possible to build a life and a family with someone of different DNA than you?
Yes.
Can I release the belief that men and women will never understand each other?
Yes.
And teach you that it can happen instantly, that it can happen now, and that it can be easy?
Yes.
And can I release any anger that you're holding towards yourself for having repeated the same mistakes in relationships, or for having repeatedly chosen the wrong men?
Yes.
And can we complete the traumas from battles, from abuse with men you may have had in other lifetimes, and teach your DNA that it's over.
Yes.
Yeah, and teach you how to be present with a man in this reality.
Yes.
Can we release any ways in which you've, any obligations that you have with your ancestors to live their relationships with men and women?
Yes.
And can I also release any ways in which you've been obligated to put your family before your partner?
Yes.
And can Creator show you how to accept a man's DNA in your body, either when you conceive, yeah, when you're making love, and afterwards, after you've had the child, without feeling invaded?
Yes.
Yeah. And can I release any war trauma, any rape trauma, yeah, from having other people's DNA inside you when you didn't want it or ask for it there?
Yes.
And can we complete that and teach you that it's over?
Yes.
And how to tell the difference between loving exchange of DNA and harmful, abusive exchange of DNA.
Yes.
And that they're very different things.
Yes.
Can we teach you that a man saying he doesn't want to talk is the same as a woman saying she doesn't want to have sex?
Yes.
And that it deserves equal respect, patience and understanding?
Yes.
That consent is an important thing.
Yes.
And can I give you Kriya's highest perspective, definition, understanding of free agency, the right to choose?
Yes.
Can Creator teach you how to believe in a man
Yes.
without him having to prove to you that he's good enough,
Yes.
and that it's possible to, and that you know how to?
Yes.
And that belief you have in him is like a seed that will grow into a tree. Can I release the belief that women are the victims of men?
Yes.
And can I give you Creator's highest perspective and truth on this situation? And can I teach you how to still acknowledge the places where men abuse women without having to disregard the places where women abuse men in order to make your pain valid, and without feeling like you're betraying women? Would you like to know that you can love both men and women at the same time?
Yes.
And that it's possible to stand up for the rights, for the love of other women and your sisters, and to protect them and love men?
Yes.
Can I release the belief that men only understand violence? And can Creator teach you that men understand a lot of things?
Yes.
That they understand patience and kindness?
Yes.
Can I release the belief that if you date a man, or if you allow the boy that you're with to become a man, that he will be violent towards you or abusive? The belief that men are dangerous. And can Creator teach you that you can be with a man and be safe, you can be with a man and feel comfortable, you can show attraction to a man and still be sexually cherished and nurtured? And that you know the difference between setting emotional boundaries with a man and controlling or nagging a man? Can Creator teach you that when you're asking for something from a man, whether it's a chore or whether it's help with something, and he's shut down, it's because the emotional bank account is in debt?
Yes.
And can Creator show you how to make deposits in the highest and best way for both you and for your relationships?
Yes.
And can I release you from the pain of being judged by other women for staying in relationships and working things out?
Yes.
And can Creator show you the difference between those women's opinion that you're, not doing the right thing, and Creator's truth?
Yes.
And can I release the shock and trauma and the abuse to your throat chakra from having gossiped about other women or having been gossiped about by other women?
Yes.
I can create or teach you how to understand and to show you what's going on in your intimate relationships without you analysing it and with you staying in your heart as this information becomes available to you.
Yes.
I can create or teach you how to live with people without psychoanalyzing them or spiritually reading them.
Yes.
Yes, Jenna.
I know.
We've all been there. Can create or teach you how to trust the universe to bring your man all the lessons that he needs to grow in the highest and best way.
Yes.
And to trust. Can I release the belief that you're your man's spiritual coach or healer or teacher? Yeah? And can we show you that Creator is the healer, teacher, coach, and that we are just the witnesses?
Yes.
Can I release the belief that it's our job to spiritually police the universe? And can Creator teach us that it's our job to witness the healing of the world and of one another?
Yes.
So would you like more love in your intimate relationships? Would you like to be able to be with men from a space of deep respect and love?
Yes.
How to have patience without feeling like you're being used or violated?
Yes.
How to still be sexually attracted to men who are emotionally vulnerable?
Yes.
Yeah, how to stop losing respect for a man when he's emotionally honest with you?
Yes.
How to know that when a man's emotionally immature, that he can grow into emotional maturity?
Yes.
And how to give the space for that to happen without forcing or rushing it?
Yes.
And how that's no different than a man giving you time when you have your period.
Yes.
Yeah? Or giving you space when you're giving birth to a child. That they're giving birth to their manhood. And that deserves time and space.
Yes.
I can create or teach you his definition, perspective and understanding of justice.
Yes.
And release any ways in which you believe that punishment is justice, and teach you the difference between the two. And can create or teach you how to live without punishing your man emotionally by sulking, throwing tantrums, crying.
Yes.
And how to choose love instead of grievances.
Yes.
Okay, how does that feel?
Delicious.
Okay, so let me just
What's happening?
on that one. Okay, so mature versus immature men. Okay, if anybody has to run because I'm going too late, feel free to run away. I won't hold anybody here if they don't need to. Okay, so it's quite actually easy to tell the difference between mature and immature men. Okay, the hardest thing is believing what you hear. Most women don't want to hear it when a man's telling them he's immature. Okay, and he'll normally tell you on the first date. Okay, so there's 5, I think, different kinds of emotional maturity. Anthony Robbins thinks there are 4, but he didn't put spiritual maturity in there, and I thought that was dumb. So, there's life mission maturity. So this is really easy to find out. What does he want to do? What's his passion? Does he know? Is he clear? Is he driven? Right? That's found out but easily just by asking and by looking at his life. Okay? Spiritual maturity. Does he have a faith? Does he have a spiritual practice? Yeah? Does he have a connection with Creator, with the universe? If you're a spiritual woman, that's a very important thing. Yeah? Is he spiritually superior? Does he never go to workshops? Does he only read books? These are the kind of things you have to pay attention and notice to. Yeah? Financial maturity. Does he think about finances, or is he constantly on the breadline? Yeah? Is he investing? Is he thinking about the future? Okay? So these are things to think about, not just when you're with a guy on a first date, but also when you're manifesting a man. Right? Financial maturity, the biggest reason couples break up is financial immaturity. Okay? Because if a guy's selfish financially or a woman's selfish financially, you can't have kids with that person. You can't build a home with that person. Does that make sense? Yeah? Relationship maturity. You know, has he thought about what he wants from intimate relationships? One of the best questions to ask with relationship maturity is, would you rather just have sex with a bunch of beautiful women or fall in love with one? Right? Normally the answer will tell you how far they are in relationship maturity. If they're relationship mature, they'll have thought about it. They'll have thought about what they want, that they want to get married, that they want to have kids, how they would like their life to be, whether it's a conscious community, whether there will have been some serious thought gone into this. Does that make sense? Yeah? If you're hearing responses like, I'm not sure, you know, I don't really like committed relationship, let's just see where this goes, that's telling you that he's not mature in that area. Does that make sense? Even if he's not sure about wanting it with you, he should know what he wants. Yeah? That energy of I'm all over the place isn't a mature energy. Okay? And emotional maturity. You know, does he know what his feelings are? This is where most men don't have very much of. Right? They don't know the difference between anger, contempt, frustration. Their emotional maturity is low. The good news is that with all of these, you can have a big part in changing that in a life. Okay? If you believe in a person's ability and they're willing. And you can tell if a person's willing by how they respond. Right? If you're with a guy on a second date and you take him to a seminar or whatever, and he's listening to the seminar and being like, what, you know, this is silly, or what, I don't understand what's going on, or he's making fun of people afterwards, you can tell he's not really mature in that way. Does that make sense? Yeah? Even if you go with a guy that claims to be very spiritual to a meditation and the whole time he's just picking up on the negative energy of other people, that's not spiritual maturity. Does that make sense? Yeah? If you're with a spiritual guy and all he's doing is reading everybody in the room, not spiritual maturity. Okay? That's a way of avoiding emotional immaturity. Yeah? You meet people when they say, I don't like small talk, run for the hills. You know what that means? They don't like foreplay. Right? Because that's what it is. If I've just met somebody and they need me to go deep with them and they're trying to force me to go deep before I even know if I like them, that's force. Does that make sense? It's emotional force. If I meet somebody and they're reading my energy and they're looking inside my body before they've asked me, do you think that's okay? You know, if you make a mistake and someone's like, oh, you're doing that because I can see in my third eye they had this trauma as a kid and this is what happened with their parents, and they're sharing it with you and you don't even know the person, do you think that's integrity? Right? So look for their spiritual maturity. Does that make sense? Do they hold other people's information with respect, with confidence, with love? Do they use what they know well? Yeah? Do they serve people? Sometimes the quietest men are the deepest.
Absolutely.
Okay? I used to think that men, when they didn't say anything, it was for a reason. The amount I've been taught about men by loyalty, about integrity. The things sometimes women will say about each other as if it doesn't matter. Men wouldn't be caught dead saying that stuff about each other. You know, to them it would be the ultimate sign of disrespect. So it's just being aware. Yeah, does everybody understand where it's coming from? Yeah? So would you like Creator's perspective, definition, understanding of maturity?
Yes.
And to have your definition be the same as Creator's?
Yes.
How to recognize it in yourself and in other people?
Yes.
Yeah? And how to develop the areas in your maturity that need developing in the highest and best way?
Yes.
Yeah? There we go. Okay, so we spoke about this earlier. Okay, so this is what masculine men want. And this is way deeper than superficial stuff. So the reason men like beautiful women as a rule, and there's actually measurements for this, they know what measurements women are most attracted to. DNA, it's about fertility. Okay, even if they say they don't want children, they want women that look healthy, that look vital. Does that make sense? Because their DNA is going, I want to reproduce, even if they're going, I'm too scared to reproduce. Does that make sense? Yeah, we get into genes here because some men have the monogamy gene, some men have the polyamorous gene, some men have like the gene that basically means that they would have multiple partners but not stay. Okay, typically that's with people who have a gypsy lineage or that have a lineage of a culture that because of war had to travel a lot. Okay, so very prevalent in things like in Jewish, gypsy, a monad traditions, like of constantly moving on, right? Because those men would never have the ability to provide stability for that woman, so their only hope to spread their lineage would be to have multiple women along the way. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you can close those genes in a man or in a woman. So if they ask you to, let's say they're having trouble committing and they want to, but they really can't stop. I've actually dealt with a few cases of sexual addiction that way. They just had the gene and they wanted to, but they couldn't stop. And it was because on a genetic level, stopping would mean their whole family line died. Yeah? So looking at the ancestral level in particular, okay? So the radiance and physical health is so important to men because of the fertility thing and the reproduction thing. It's also so that you're their safe harbor. If you're constantly exhausted, if you're constantly down, if you're constantly moody, are you a safe harbor for a man? Are you a safe harbor for anyone? No, if you're in fear, you can only give fear, right? So take care of yourself, eat well, drink well, sleep enough, eat more fruits and vegetables. Radiance is not about being thin or about being beautiful. It's about having energy and life force running through you. That's what's attractive. Does that make sense? Yeah? That's why, have you ever seen those couples where the guy is like ridiculously good looking and successful and you see his girlfriend and she's like a mouse? Yeah? And you hear the woman going, how did that happen? You know? And the other women are kind of going like, oh, I could really, I could have done better than that, or but he could have done so much better. He's never going to leave her. Because she's giving him radiance on a spiritual level that those women can't even conceive of. Does that make sense? Beauty is way deeper than a physical thing. That's why radiance and physical health, men are attracted to radiance, and that's way deeper than skin, and it's way deeper than looks. Okay? So it's radiance and physical health. Okay? Physical health also triggers major things for men because historically it was the other way around. Men used to live longer than women because of childbirth. Okay? Men are terrified we're going to die. And because they want to make love to us and they want to have sex with us, many of them, because we died during childbirth, have guilt around having sex because they're scared that if they have sex with us, we'll die in childbirth and it will be their fault. Does that make sense? Yeah, and they're going to be left with kids and they don't know what to do with kids. Okay, so it's a subconscious fear around why women need to be healthy. If she's healthy, she'll be able to survive childbirth. If she's healthy, I'll get to be with my love for longer. Yeah? So it's a big deal. When he sees you taking care of himself, you'll almost see him take a deep breath. Yeah, and it won't be a superficial thing. Okay? So her social status, this one shocked me. I didn't even realize men thought about this, but it was in a lot of the research, okay? So it's not about being the most popular woman or a celebrity, but your job is to be well respected and liked in your social circle. Okay? This is why people who have friends or healthy social networks are more likely to be in healthy relationships long term. So getting good at connecting with people, kind of holding yourself like a celebrity, and giving to people who are in your social circle. This is why men like women who do things like craft fairs and bake sales and children's drive groups and stuff like that. This is why so many men fall in love with teachers. Right, and waitresses. It's that energy of she's good in her social circle, she can take care of everybody here, right? Which means he's not the only one protecting her. What happens in the olden days if a woman isn't very good in her social circle? Women are property, right? What happens if your property misbehaves? You get punished, right? Because that's your woman running awry, doing things she shouldn't be doing, okay? Yeah, it doesn't seem like it, but men used to get really severe consequences if their wife was to disrespect another man. They might lose their job, right? If their wife wasn't liked by other women, they might have to move because they might accuse her of being, a witch or get her killed. So they were watching for the survival of their offspring. This woman has to be well liked. Does that make sense? Yeah? It's not, these things are not as superficial as they look, okay? Her spiritual core, this is actually one of the main ones. And this is not about what religion or faith you have, it's about your generosity, your compassion, your ability to actually love. Okay? There's a post going around Facebook at the moment saying, I'm breaking up with spirituality. Anybody seen it?
No.
No? And it's this girl who was... I know.
No, after the last few weeks,
I know. And it's this girl who basically has been a spiritual, teacher for a long time, and basically had all these friends, and she broke her leg, and none of them came.
God.
Not even her guru came. And then she was left on her own, and it created this betrayal. So a lot of people have this one where it's happened many times in history. Every time a woman was burned at the stake, or where people who claim to be spiritual were actually not very spiritual at all. Yeah, in that scenario. So they're looking for your real kindness, your generosity, your ability. Yeah. So can I release that trauma? Because it just came up like a giant red flag for everyone in this room. Yeah, of being betrayed by spiritual people, by the church, by religion. And releasing false spirituality and fear of false spirituality.
Yes.
And giving you Creator's definition, perspective and understanding of spirituality and how to recognize it in others. And of course, in Miracles there's a beautiful line that says, many who conspire with love don't know its name. Okay? There you go, that's those downloads in. Okay. Respected. So men want women who value and appreciate them the way they are. They don't just want love, they want approval. They want safe harbor from the world. So our intimate relationships job is to be that safe space. In a Course in Miracles and in Marianne Williamson's romance seminar, she says, God doesn't give anything as a gift only to you. He gives it so that to you, in the presence of your love, it will grow into the gift it's capable of being for the world. Okay? So for example, let's say you have the gift of being clairvoyant or psychic. When God gives you that gift, it's so that it will serve not just you, but the others in your life, in your community, in your social circle. It's the same thing with that man or with that person. Now, life can be harsh. Okay? And if, let's say, you've gone to work that day and your man's gone to work that day and he comes home and there's only more stress and strife at home, can you see how soul-destroying that can be? How there can be no safe harbor for either of you. Yeah, no safety at work, no safety at home, nowhere to go. Especially if you share a house with someone or a bed with someone, right? This is why they say never go to bed angry. Okay? So little things that would seem obvious, but nowadays for some reason they're not obvious anymore. First thing in the morning, instead of looking at your phone, kissing your partner, saying good morning, right? Telling them that you love them, asking them if they're hungry, right? Not jumping into the shower, grabbing the phone, stealing a sandwich, running away. First thing you do when you get home, how are you? I've missed you. I'm happy to see you. Hugs, kisses, yeah? Dinner. Okay, those things become practices. They become the spaces in which you connect and share love with one another. Right? They're sacred things. It's the little things that we do every day that make us stay in love and fall in love with a person. Right? The number of times I will be, where was I? I was at my course this week, and it had been a really amazing day and also a really long day, and then one of my classmates came and touched my shoulder and she was like, Todd's outside waiting for you, and literally, I even thinking about it, I got up and she was like, class isn't over yet. He can wait, class isn't over yet, but in my mind it was like, I'm so happy to see you. Yeah, because he's made an effort to create a loving environment here. It's a home I look forward to coming home to. If I've had a hard day, it's my safe harbor. The number of girlfriends I have who will do anything to avoid going home. Okay, who will work late hours at night because they don't have that. Does that make sense? The number of men I walk past working in offices that don't want to go home because being with the person that they love who no longer loves them is more lonely than being in front of a computer. Okay? So it's that kind of, it's really realizing that men really making that space, making that time for connection.